year cost. So every year after that, that's what that would cost. So year 3 would be roughly 45,000. Year 4, roughly. But we only committed to 2 years just to make sure that the product was doing what we needed it to, and we didn't want to sign a multi-year contract before we could fully vet it.
Okay, and this current school year is year 1. 2021 is year 1. Okay. And then, well, that sort of goes into the other question in terms of in the future. 2 things, both looking back, because we're moving away from decision ed. If there are some things that decision ed did that this doesn't do, and will you be looking for products to do that? And then looking ahead, if, as you say, if after 2 years, this just is not quite what we need, is the data that's been put in here transferable then to a new type of system?
Sure. I'm not aware of anything Decision Ed did that this can't do. So they both allow us to have reporting on student testing data, anything else we need. It's just a matter of how it's presented. So we would just need to recreate it in Illuminate. And then regarding using the data, if we choose not to go forward, we still own the data, so we would be able to export that and load it in a new system.
Okay, great, thanks. And then my brief comment is just, which I think many of us feel that as important as it is to have these data systems and to get data, it really comes down to the classroom and student interaction. So just a comment as we're spending so much money on a data warehouse.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item C is a motion to approve the affiliation agreement with Penn State University for virtual clinical experiences for communication sciences and disorders graduate interns. This is shown in attachment 6C.
Bedell, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, any public comment? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item D is a motion to approve the athletic training service contract with Mount Nittany Health, and this is shown in attachment 6D.
Duffy, so moved.
Bedell,
Is there a
second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Laurel?
Just a couple questions about this. It looked like it was a fairly standard language, but the way it's written, it would expire a year from when it's being done, when we're executing it, which would put us hopefully well into the start of a fall season next year. And I was wondering if that's just a pro forma thing or if it can be actually adjusted so that if need be, it could expire before the season begins. So.
The intent of this agreement is to be for the school year. If there is some language that would extend it, that's not necessarily intended, but it is for the school year, and the hope is to have a new agreement in place for July 1.
Okay, because it does say 1 calendar year from when it's signed, so.
Understood that
Yeah.
This was put together very quickly, and it is a standard contract, but the goal would be to have a new contract in place for July 1 or sometime over the summer before the school year starts.
And then the other thing was looking at the cost structure. I'm wondering if there can be a not to exceed amount for B, which is the per hour cost? The reason I'm concerned is it seems like we've spent a lot more in the past, which I get, but contracts where the initial amount is small and then when everything is said and done, far, far more is in the additional scope. Things are difficult for us to plan around and you to plan around. So that's the reason.
You're obviously looking at a specific page. Could you direct me to that
I'm
page?
sorry, it's item 7 or VII.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't catch up.
Yeah,
with you.
no, I'm sorry.
This is for additional services. Yeah, I don't know how to, I wouldn't know how to put an not to exceed in at this point in time. Because I don't know how to quantify the number of hours.
Laurel,
that
it's
would
one
be
of,
necessary.
excuse me, Randy. Laurel, it's one of those things that we don't pay unless we use it or have need for it. So the not to exceed would typically be that $25,000 figure where that operates as a not to exceed. They're providing an extensive amount of services for, I think everyone who's been involved in this contract would say, an incredibly reasonable price. So from the administration standpoint, we're extremely pleased with the contract's financial aspects.
I guess that's actually, I appreciate that. And that's actually where my concern comes in, because I know it's paid per request. And so if it were to begin to, for instance, approach, if that second section were to approach 25,000 again, so doubling the size of the contract, it might still be a very reasonable contract. It's just that if that were to happen, it would be nice to hear back and to just check back in. I mean, if it's only going to be a, 1,000, 2,000, that's one thing. But the concern was that it would wind up being far more than the 25,000 that we're
The basic scope of services that they can plan for year in and year out are reflected in the $25,000 price. The other items are items that you typically don't necessarily have the ability to plan for. So they don't want to be able to give you a not to exceed price. One year it might be $1,000. One year it might be $20,000. So it's difficult for them to agree to something where it could be a wild swing one direction or another.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging for us then to understand.
Actually, Laurel, that language was also in our existing contract as well. So that's been language and I don't believe we've incurred any additional costs on the prior contract. We haven't asked for any additional work.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Laurel, I guess, so mainly your question is if it's well beyond the estimate we're given, to just bring us a heads up on that, right?
Yeah, even if it doesn't say not to exceed that, yeah, just that caveat, I guess. And then the last question that I had, I don't know about anyone else, pertained to, we heard from people, because we are switching contractors or switching offices, but there are trainers that have worked with our athletes. And we heard last time that they can apply to this company to be trainers. And this has it's in clause 11, I think, a prohibition against any individual being hired by the district, which I understand. That makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to make sure that that wouldn't extend if for some reason there was another group that got the contract with us, that they might be able to apply there so that the person themselves could continue to work with our athletes.
Laurel, I don't have access to the individual contracts that these trainers would have with their various employers, but I would be surprised if they don't have contracts that have non-competes in them. So it may be that their employers, whether it be University Orthopedics or Mount Nittany or Geisinger or whatever the provider might be, they might control that versus us. But the language that you're referencing about the district not hiring them, that's pretty standard. We see that in all kinds of contracts. The contracts we have, for example, with nursing providers will have that same kind of provision in it. But we don't, I mean, we certainly would accept it if someone wanted to apply and we were in the market to hire a trainer. I'm not sure that we are in the market to hire a trainer, but if we were, we would certainly be interested in them. But my guess is that they have restrictions that might preclude them from doing this anyway. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to? Laura, did you have another question?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't worried about us hiring them. I know that it came up from several people. We got concerns when they saw that we were moving to a different group about, well,
Right.
what about my trainer? And
Mhm.
we were told at that point that those trainers could apply. I don't know whether they'd be hired. That's beyond our scope. I'm just concerned that somehow if we switched groups and trainers have gotten to know our athletes, that without any notice to the athletes, so that's why it raised a red flag for me, given the comments we'd gotten previously.
But I think switching groups was not our choice.
Right.
I think they pretty much apply and have an incredibly strong opportunity to be employed there. So we will, we were interacting with the folks from Mount Nittany who were heading this up. So that was a real positive response in regard to our trainers that we've had relationships with in the athletic department to gain employment through this process. Because it's not like Mount Nittany has this staff training group ready to go. They need to make some hires if this is approved. So Randy, that was my understanding that I had directly in conversations. I think you did as well.
Yes, I know that they're making their hires complete in the next week. I do not know who has completed. I believe that the question though is, if Mount Nittany hires people, is there a prohibition for them to not be hired by a future company? And I'm not reading it that way. Scott, are you?
Not at all.
Okay, I think that concern then is invalid.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was wondering, Randy. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Any other questions on the athletic training contract? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item?
Before you take a vote, Amber, I would like to say that we are pleased that Mount Nittany has engaged with us in this, and because they are our district physician, and we're glad that we can extend this relationship with them, and hoping to do so with some other business that and services that we may need to purchase in the near future.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, so seeing no public comment, then we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Okay, so that item has passed. At this time, we're going to shift on our agenda to the fall athletics health and safety plan items. And before we move on to those motions, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. O'Donnell and the administrative team to introduce these items and the approach that they're taking.
Thanks, Mrs. Concepcion. So this is, I'm going to just share a little bit on the front end and then ask Gene Knaus, as well as Chris Weekland and Will Stout to help us provide the overview. This is, I believe, the third time we've discussed fall athletics with the board in some fashion. Much of the plan has already been vetted and in place for some time. What we're proposing tonight is a plan to add competitions and some adjustments to practices. As always, I appreciate all the work that many people put into developing the proposal. And as I think of this consideration in our school decisions, we're constantly threading the needle, trying to weigh providing opportunities for students with protecting the community's health and safety. While there's obviously risk involved with athletics, we have many mitigation strategies in place. And I believe that the plan seeks to provide a chance for our student athletes to engage in the sports they love, albeit in a more restrictive manner. We've been grappling with two big questions, and I'll go ahead and address them up front before I turn it over to Gene. First, if we are in school, why would only members of the football team be in remote learning? As we looked at dividing contact and non-contact sports, it became clear that football is unique because of multiple collisions on every play. According to the National Federation of State High School Associations and Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, football is the only fall sport where when it comes to the potential infection risk, it falls into the category of higher risk. All other sports are moderate or lower risk. So that was a key factor in our thinking. I want to add that because we know our athletic department is investigating new safeguards that are designed specifically for football, I believe that we should involve our safety team to consider whether the additional gear would merit a change to our thinking on this matter. Today, I did get a chance to view the protective steps they're considering, and I shared this with some of our safety team and received some positive feedback, but we've yet to have a conversation about it. If they view this as a similar transmission risk in comparison to the other contact teams, then I would request that we'd be able to permit them to attend school via their every other day cohort, just like the other students in the proposal. The second question, why can't we have sports if we're remote district-wide? One could argue that if we are fully remote, and they have, we could hold competitions and not risk spreading the virus because we're not in schools. We believe, however, that if the spread of virus is so high that we can't be in schools, then it's too high for having competitions with student athletes from other communities, which, by the way, is the CDC's highest risk activity in athletics. So for the sake of the health and safety of our school community, we felt compelled to take this approach in our proposal. So that's what I have at this time. We're going to keep going through our overview before we turn it over back to Mrs. Concepcion, and we'll do the Q&A. So Jean Knaus, our Director of Student Services and point person of our health and safety team, is going to give an overview of the health and safety aspects of the proposed fall athletics plan. Thanks, Jean.
Sure, thanks, Bob. So I'm just going to go over what it looks like in remote and then when we're in person, and just give you a brief overview of reminders of what our health and safety plan really entails and what this includes in it. So we will physically distance. We're going to talk about remote sports first, the key points. We will continue to physically distance. We'll have appropriate physical distancing of 6 feet maintained in sidelines and benches during events and contests. As far as masks are concerned, coaches and staff will be required to wear a mask at all times during practices and competitions. For indoor and outdoor sport practices and competitions, cloth masks will be required while idle and will not engage in when not engaged in competition and play. For sanitizing, we will continue to sanitize equipment between individual use and enforce frequent hand sanitizing. We'll allow inter-squad scrimmages, keeping in mind the mass gathering numbers. We'll follow those guidelines. Screening prior to practices will now include temperature checks, and any athlete that is diagnosed with COVID-19 must have a physician's clearance to return to play. In addition to these key points related to remote, we're now going to talk about some of the added features that will be when we're in-person instruction is resumed. So all sports will participate in a shortened competition schedule. And then transportation to competitions will include the following mitigation measures. We'll reduce the number of people on the bus. We're using hand sanitizers upon boarding. Physical distancing will be on the bus up to 6 feet. Windows will open when possible. We'll try to schedule Fridays through Saturday and Sunday whenever possible and utilize families for assistance with transportation. An added screening measure that we will incorporate in the in-person model would be screening teams that are visiting, coming to us. We will require them to fill out a screening for their entire team. So in a nutshell and a brief summary, that's the safety plan. And I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Will at this time, or Chris.
Thank you, Jean. I think I'm going to take it from here. I appreciate
Okay.
that. No, thank you very much. Thank you, Jean. And on behalf of Lauren Crispell and our athletic department, thank you for your time tonight, everyone. I appreciate this. We appreciate the chance to share our perspectives again regarding the strong desire and need to continue our measured approach of engaging our over 700 fall season student athletes in meaningful, impactful experiences, including competition play. What we propose tonight is a plan that rewards our student athletes and coaches for their commitment to their craft and their commitment to safety, with the opportunity to enter into interscholastic competition seasons. We believe it is a plan that takes into consideration the emotional and physical needs and also safety of our student athletes. as well as our school community at large. With many moving parts, including addressing the equity of opportunities for our students and preserving the safety of our students, we recognize that this is a complex and challenging topic. For many student athletes, the choice and opportunity to compete rests solely on their interscholastic opportunities, as they may not have other options to compete. The proposed competition plan provides for choices and opportunities by allowing athletics to continue as safely as possible. The athletes and families have chosen to participate in athletics, weighing the risks and considering all the benefits, such as physical, mental, emotional growth and stability, social identification with the team, academic accountability, mentoring of our student athletes, and for some, post-secondary educational opportunities. I want to thank our student athletes, families, and the coaches for trusting us and following the guidelines within our health and safety plan to date. In closing, I frequently visit our teams at practice, and when I see our kids, they are so grateful to be playing sports. They are so joyful to be with their peers, and they are so hopeful to return to competitions. This plan benefits us all, as we are truly better together. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our plan with you this evening. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Stout.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. And if you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind indulging me just for a couple minutes, I just want to just share some thoughts before I get into the plan, because obviously we've been spending a lot of time. We've been hearing from a lot of community members regarding this matter. So I just want to share some thoughts and we'll get into the plan. First thing I want to say is we would not be here tonight making this recommendation if it wasn't for the remarkable, and I want to stress that, remarkable cooperation that we've seen with our coaches and with our students throughout the summer when we had our optional workouts, and then when we've had our interim fall plan the last few weeks. They indicated to us, how much they value the experience, and rather than just indicating it, they demonstrated it with their behaviors in following the safety protocols. A couple other things I want to mention. Obviously, we realize that many of our students have been participating in youth and club sports throughout the summer and traveled throughout PA and to many other states for competitions as well. We are also well aware of our neighboring schools and the schools in our Mid-Penn League, and that they're proceeding with their fall competition plan. So these are all facts that we're well aware of. And we also acknowledge the value of athletics for social, emotional, and physical benefits, which are well documented and observed. That's why it was very important for us to have a summer optional workout program for our students and then that interim fall plan, because we realize those interactions in athletics are invaluable for many of our kids. Obviously, the administrative had the unenviable task of weighing the benefits of athletics versus the risk of participating in athletics during a pandemic. And believe me when I say we've heard many and various thoughts and opinions on this topic. Ultimately, we're tasked with weighing all the information that we have, vetting it through our health and safety team, and making a recommendation that we believe is in the best interest of our students and community. And we believe this fall athletics competition plan accomplishes that goal. Fortunately, most of the information you heard from Mrs. Knaus earlier, most of the information in this athletics competition proposal, particularly the health and safety protocols, were included in our optional summer and interim fall plans. So our students and our athletes and our coaches are well aware of it, and as I've mentioned previously, are following it. So tonight, I'm just going to provide a brief overview of our proposed competition plan, and then our team will take questions from the board. Some key reasons for resuming competitions with athletics, as was mentioned at the beginning, and this is following the Mid-Penn recommendation. As most of you are aware, the Mid-Penn, the league we participate in, pushed the start of the fall season back several weeks to allow districts time to prepare. Because of that, we for all of our athletic teams, our competition plan, if it gets approved, is going to have a greatly reduced schedule. For example, our girls volleyball team typically plays 22 matches, and in the proposed schedule would have a maximum of 12 matches. Mrs. Knaus mentioned earlier, we've made modifications as far as face mask wearing, hand sanitizing, physical distancing to mitigate the spread of the virus. And again, our athletes and coaches have done a yeoman's job following that this summer. Also, I think it's worth noting that district-wide, we've had no known COVID-19 positive cases on those teams that participated in our summer optional and fall interim athletic plans. So those are some of the key reasons, that we'd like to resume competitions in our district. As you'll see in the plan, we have a plan for, in person, and then we've broken that plan down, and Dr. O'Donnell alluded to some of the reasoning earlier. But, if we are in-person status as a school district, the plan is for all sports, that all of our sports teams will participate in that shortened competition schedule that would be mostly within the Mid-Penn League. As Dr. O'Donnell alluded to earlier, there is an exception for football, and he provided the reasons that football, at least starting in this plan, football players would be required to go fully remote. But again, we are looking at some mitigating factors that may, if we take in front of our health and safety team, we may be able to amend this plan. But the plan as it currently is being presented tonight would require football players to go into full remote status. When the district is in fully remote status, the plan does call for non-contact sports, which would be cross country, golf, and tennis, to participate in that shortened competition schedule that I had mentioned previously. And the main reason for this is that these sports have no variance of risk, whether students are practicing or competing. So regardless of the status that we're in, we would like to continue with those sports in competition. However, if we're in full remote status, this plan says that our contact sports, field hockey, football, soccer, and volleyball, would switch to operating under the SCASD Athletics Health and Safety Plan with no competitions outside of the school district. I do want to mention the one thing that we're adding to the plan is that if we are in full remote, these contact sports would not be able to participate in competitions, but we would allow them to have intra-squad scrimmages so that when or if we do move back to in-person learning, that those teams would be ready to assume competitions quickly rather than waiting several weeks and practicing intra-squad scrimmages at that point. Some other things, additional considerations, Mrs. Knaus mentioned it earlier, but just as we did with our in-person school year recommendation, we are going to ask families if they can help us with transportation. Transportation is a key concern with social distancing on our bus rides, many being, an hour and a half plus to the Mid-Penn. So we are going to ask parents if they can help us with transporting student athletes, which would help minimize the number of students that we're putting on buses. An additional health and safety feature in this plan that we did not include in our summer optional plan or our fall interim plan is that all athletes and coaches will have their temperatures taken before practice or travel to competitions as part of the screenings. Previously, we've had students fill out a questionnaire. We've had them disclose symptoms. We were monitoring them, but we did not take temperature. So that is a new preventative action that we plan to take in this plan. The last thing that I want to mention before we take questions, we did have a retroactive approval for golf. Dr. O'Donnell made the decision earlier this week to allow our boys and girls golf athletes to participate in an event earlier in the week. And the main reason for that, prior to waiting for the outcome of this plan, was that if we did not have our golf athletes participate, it would have eliminated them from any opportunity at postseason play. So, and again, that is one of our non-contact sports. So we were able to make the decision to allow our golf team to participate earlier this week in that event. So I did want to mention that this evening. So again, that's a brief, summary of the plan. The board, you do have the memo in front of you, and also you have access to the entire plan. So our team is ready to take questions that you may have.
Okay, I'll open it up to board member questions then.
Amber, I just want to make one point. Although we had no cases this summer, we are investigating one potential case of a student athlete at this time.
Thank you. Okay. Lori?
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So this is just one is a clarification. Will it be made clear that student athletes are not allowed to drive to competitions?
Yes, I think what we had discussed was help from parents. Chris
Right.
and Lauren, I don't think if we play any mid-Penn games, I don't think our intent was to allow students to drive.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that was really clear. One of the things that we had heard from the tennis team in particular was their objection to participating in PIAA travel. And so I'm wondering if there is an accommodation that can be made for them to develop a schedule that would be agreeable to them, where they wouldn't have to be traveling to our conference partners.
That's something we can work with our coaches and athletes on. So at this point in time, that's something we can reach out to them and figure out.
Okay, that would be great.
Lori, did you receive something from a tennis coach or something? I didn't see that.
We received several emails from one of the tennis coaches and also from a couple of tennis players. And I think the captain of the tennis team spoke in public comment. So I think that they have some significant concerns about travel. So I just want to make sure that we're not overlooking their desire for competition. So, yeah. In terms of buses, are we going to be relying on like Fullington buses again, or school buses? What is that plan looking like, particularly for our largest teams?
As long as they are available, I'm not interested in sending a school bus to our mid-Penn opponents. It is a cost factor, but Fullington, as long as they continue to provide favorable rates to us as they have in the past, I believe that we can make that accommodation, and it's an appropriate one.
Okay, and then just as we worry about our own bus drivers, I just want to make sure that we're taking care of any bus drivers that will be driving the buses of the kids, and if there are any mitigation factors any mitigation strategies that we can help them with, if that's part of the protocol as well.
We will, Fullington is now a school bus transporter for us. So they're very familiar with our mitigation efforts, and if they need help with some of the supplies, we can more than willingly accommodate that.
Okay. And I have a couple just specific questions in the plan. On the bottom of page 14 in the health and safety plan, the first bullet point about returning isolated or quarantined coaches and staff, it says student or coaching staff member with fever or symptoms that may be associated with COVID-19 and no known direct exposure to a person with COVID-19 may return to play when they are asymptomatic and have been fever-free for at least 24 hours, et cetera. Is there any reason why we shouldn't also want them to have a COVID test?
Lori,
and I'm
what
genuinely
page are you on?
asking.
Yeah, Lori, what page? I'm sorry.
I'm on the bottom of page 14 of the health and safety plan.
The first bolt.
Yeah, so right there, the first bullet point. Yeah, it doesn't say that they need a COVID test to return, only that they are without symptoms.
It's because there's no known exposure.
Right.
And so this was right from the Department of Health and comes right from our health and safety plan.
Okay. All right, if that feels satisfying to everybody, then that's fine. I just, with asymptomatic people, it can be difficult to know whether or not you were in contact with somebody. So I was just hoping to err on the side of caution. And then the other question I have, on the bottom of page 16, the very last point on page 16 talks about unique safety protocols for student athletes with complex needs or other vulnerable individuals. And I just wondered, is there any example that you can offer of a kind of accommodation that you might provide? And, I'm just trying to think of higher risk individuals. Like, would we be counting obesity in this as a comorbidity or higher risk concern?
I think only if there was a doctor's note or something that needed to drive that. I don't think we would identify that. It would be something that needs to be brought to our attention that's been prescribed by a doctor, and then we would follow that.
Okay, so they would bring that to us as opposed to, okay, got all that. All right, well, I will take a pause and sort of review my notes and let others talk. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lori. Jim?
Let me make sure I'm unmuted here. Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and thanks for everybody for putting this plan together. I know that there was a lot of weekend work associated with this, and I appreciate it very much, as I'm sure the athletes do. So talking about the visiting teams screening, doing a screening before they get on the bus, basically to come here. We're doing that. We would do the same, right? For if we're going away. And is there I guess my question is there a league standard for this? So we don't have to familiarize ourselves with the screening process that the other team requires, and they don't have to familiarize themselves with our screening process.
Right. With the Mid-Penn, there's a uniform screening process and form that all teams are using.
Great. Good answer. So it talks about at the end of the football season, 14 days before returning to in-person. Can that be modified to I fill in the number of days. So N days with a negative COVID test.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, the 14 days was in discussion with our epidemiologist, and but I don't know, Jim. We can sure if you're saying get them back sooner if they have a test completed.
Yeah, I just, well, and it does say that there can be, we can consider it on a case by student example, but I think that might be a good modification for, returning those students if we are in person, which we would be, of course, because they're playing, to return them more quickly to that sort of hybrid learning at the high schools.
Yeah, at the end of it, but I'm unsure you can test your way out of a quarantine at the end of after you've had contact though. So, but we'll gladly run that by them.
Yeah. I don't know what the right number of days is, and I don't know. So thank you for.
When I had asked Maciek about that at a previous meeting, he said the CT standard was still 14 days.
It is, and I was just going to say that, especially if there's an assumption that they were exposed.
Okay.
I think that, I think that's the CDC guideline on that.
Okay. And so additional buses might be necessary, but we're sort of paying for half the contest, right? So that might wash out anyway, right? And Lori, what Lori was talking about is the distinction is between a coach bus and a school bus. Is that right? Randy, you might know that. I think you're muted.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that would be better to have those. And then a question about competitions. So holding competitions, particularly football, in one of our two venues, either the field at the high school or Memorial Field, so both of those are within the borough of State College, and how do we comply with the borough ordinance if we're having a football
my understanding that as an education institution, we are exempt from their, inside our facility, we are exempt from their gathering policy.
Okay. Good. That's, and I think,
That may not be true for around Memorial Field on the sidewalk, but inside Memorial Field, it would be.
gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I have for now. I'll just take a look at my notes too. Thank you.
Kyle?
Thank you. I just had one quick question about the plan, which is Dr. O'Donnell, you said earlier that the student athletes, if we do end up playing, will not be allowed to drive themselves down to games in other places. It seems, at least to me, like that would be a really good way to get people off the bus, which seems to be one of the biggest transmission points. Is that a SCASD rule or is that a PIAA or Mid-Penn rule?
That would be us, Kyle, and we would want parents to help out. I think having young drivers, some of whom are in the first year of having a license, we don't think that makes sense to be driving to Harrisburg for a game and then competing and then driving home all in one evening, or in some cases can be a pretty long night, depending on if there's a varsity and then a JV game following it. So we would want to enlist the families to help us, and thus far the feedback from the athletic department was that through discussions with coaches that we think we'd get pretty good support from families to help us out with that.
Okay, because part of what was just worrying me is if we have a kid whose parents can't drive them down to for whatever reason, but who could drive themselves if that was allowed, then that's just another kid who's going on the bus, and the bus seems to be perhaps the biggest place where COVID can be transmitted in this entire thing. So yeah, so I guess I was just wondering if there's a way to change that rule, because I'm pretty sure that at least most teenagers can deal with driving to Harrisburg and back. And so I'm
right now I've been around a lot of teenage drivers for the past 28 years, and I have one in my house, and I think having a day of school and then an evening in many instances, I hear you, Kyle, but someone mentioned earlier, since we have about half the competitions, the budget for the buses is still there at this time, and we would look at if we need more transportation space, because we would have minimum requirements for spacing kids out on the bus, and we also do know we have a bunch of parents that would help us out with this. At least that's the feedback thus far, but I think we would, if we can't get the help we need, then we would consider that as a last resort, Kyle. But right now, you're not going to get my vote on that. Sorry.
Gotcha, thank you. I was just worried about the bus, but thank you for that.
I agree with that. I agree with you. I think what we would do is we'd look to additional vehicles.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be a little as worried, if not more worried, about the risk of teenage drivers doing those long drives and when they're tired, especially coming home in the evening over 7 mountains, that versus the risk of being on a bus. So. Laurel?
Thanks. Thank you you actually answered a lot of my questions, even just with the beginning, so I appreciate that. A couple that I was wondering about. On page 11, it talks about spectators. And this may play into some of what Jim was asking, and I'm not sure which ordinance he was referring to, but as long as they're within our facilities, at first it seems to say athletes, coaches, officials, band, cheerleaders, and staff only, but then it says addition of visitors and spectators will be contingent upon future health conditions. And I'm wondering what conditions might allow spectators. And in addition to that, whether, and it may not be part of the plan, but if we were to allow some, whether we could give priority, say, to the families of athletes as opposed to just general spectators.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in first. Right now, with how the ping pong's going, the governor came out with some numbers, and what we want to do is see where that goes, and that's why what we drafted in the plan did include state and local requirements. What we would like to do is take a look at that in our specific venues with our safety team. If something from the state doesn't come out and it is a local decision, and look at it that way. parents would obviously be a top priority. You know, for the outdoor venues, if it is at 250, my concern for 250 would be if it includes student athletes, because if there's a larger event, say a football game, you know, that would be a concern. So we'll see what comes out from the state. If it stays at what the governor put down, I know that, I understand, I believe it was overruled and now it's an appeal. We'll see where that goes, Laurel. And then Chris, do you want to, if anyone else wants to weigh in, Laurel, does that help or how
Yeah, I just was wondering, because it mentioned it, what some of those might be, and it sounds like it's the governor and his rulings that you're looking at in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd also wondered, we got some clarification on cheerleading, on cheer as a winter sport, but I was wondering about the sideline cheer and whether that would be allowed in both inter-squad and non-district.
I think we'd have to see what the total numbers were allowed in an event and then work from there if we're able to do that and safely space out, you know, the team, see what Chris and Lauren work out with each of the coaches and what they need. Chris, do you want to answer the sideline question?
No, absolutely, Laurel, thank you. But, you know, cheer and band will all be in consideration, and we'll work through our guidelines here to make sure that we try to get as much student involvement as we can, including our cheer and band.
Great, great. And then the last thing was about booster clubs, because the plan specifically says that there would not be concessions, and we'd heard from booster clubs about concern about that, and whether there's been ongoing discussion or how the district will make up, because I know they contribute a lot to our athletic program, financially as well as work. But
I know Lauren and myself have been working with the Booster Club and recognize the challenges that they're facing as well, without a doubt. And there are some collaborative efforts that we're trying to put forth that will help each other out in the area of finances and fundraising efforts as well. So those are just ongoing at this point in time.
okay, I just was checking that they're in the loop because they weren't specifically mentioned. So that's why I was asking. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions, Scott?
Yeah, thanks. So a bunch of questions. I guess on the transportation, fully support the parent participation in the transportation, 100%. However, in the past, that's been absolutely taboo. And my understanding, or my assumption maybe, was that that was primarily a risk or liability or insurance issue. So the question I have there, which again, I fully support the parent, model. I'd like to have seen us doing that before, but have we been able to reconcile that with past practice of not permitting that so that we're not getting ourselves into some sort of liability concern?
I think the key there, Scott, was parents driving other families' students was what we were running into with clubs years back. You have a good memory there. But we do, when we have away events, and I believe, Chris, parents can see the coach and get permission to bring their own kids home currently. But I don't know if Randy or Chris want to jump in on this one. I don't think we have an issue when people drive their own kids. I think it's when they drive other people's children is what our issue has been.
Correct. And in that case, the liability or issue has been and can be resolved.
So this proposal then is it's only for parents with their child transporting to and or from the event, correct?
As it is written right here, I think we can always investigate special circumstances. However, the protocol and procedure in the past, we have put in place for transportation of student athletes that were not their own children, would be on a case-by-case basis with both parents' involvement in signing off of that. So that's something we could, again, evaluate on a case-by-case basis if there's a unique circumstance.
Okay. Next series of questions really relates to the contact and non-contact sport considerations. I'm just curious, and I'm not referring to, when I say community, I'm really not referring to the community at large, but what does our internal football community feel about their portion of the plan, the requirement to be remote? I mean, what's the vibe that you're getting from those student athletes, families, coaches, et cetera, regarding that stipulation? Just curious.
I'm hesitant to speak for all families, but to your point, I've heard from many, and there's a strong indicator, there's a strong desire for their student athletes to compete. And there's a willingness to do what it takes to get to that point. So that's the overall general sentiment that I'm receiving. And again, I don't want to speak for all families, but that's a general sentiment.
Yep, very fair. I appreciate that. Any delineation between varsity and JV throughout because I'm not familiar. I know obviously that there's varsity and JV football. I don't know as much on varsity and JV and some of the other fall sports. But is there, whether there is or is not, is there a delineation in any way between varsity or JV as we look at the plan?
Both varsity and JV are part of the plan collectively.
Okay. So the next question I had related to the grouping of the contact sports. And I'm just curious how field hockey, soccer, and volleyball, while not being non-contact sports, I would agree, because there is some opportunity for contact. I'm trying to get my arms around how we group them with a high contact sport like football. And one of the reasons that I'm asking the question is, field hockey and soccer do have some opportunity for contact, but nothing nearly like football, but they're outside. Volleyball probably has the least opportunity for contact, but they're inside, but in a larger gym. So I'm just trying to get my arms around how we group those three sports with the higher contact of football when we're looking at other low risk sports, non-contact sports, being able to continue their competition in a fully remote model.
That classification really stems from the NFHS's guidelines and classification of sports, where they have low, moderate, and high risk sports. Low being our non-contact sports, and the moderate to high being the others. So that's where that classification came in.
But so Chris, when you say moderate to high, is there a moderate classification and then a separate high classification?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there is. Football is in the high. The rest of those contact sports are in the moderate.
What was the reasoning that we put the moderates in with the high and not with the low?
I think it's just the overall element of contact versus non-contact, that delineation there.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one that gives me pause, on this, because trying to find ways to give the largest number of student athletes the opportunity to safely compete. And, I'm just wondering if we can look at that moderate category in a separate classification than the higher risk category of football, that might allow them to, compete in some manner if we're fully remote. I don't have an answer, for that or a suggestion, unfortunately, but I'd love to see us evaluate that. Another question I had was, so if we're looking at football and the requirement to have basically the football team be remote if they are in competition, what is the impact, if any, or is there any consideration to siblings that obviously might not be playing football, but would be in the same household with the football player. And there, will siblings have to go remote as well? Have we thought about that relative to, again, this is way beyond contact tracing, but relative to our risk strategies and things like that? And I'm not proposing it, I'm just asking the question whether it was considered.
No, not unless there was a known direct exposure.
So from that standpoint, we'd rely on the contact tracing there. Okay.
Correct.
I guess the last thing I would is less of a, I guess it's partially a question, more of a statement of, I'd like for us to find a way to build some flexibility into the plan, just like we did in the broader district-wide safety plan, to give the administration some leeway, some subjectivity, whatever it might be, to react to differing circumstances without it absolutely having to come back to the board for another vote or another approval or discussion or whatever it might be. In the original safety plan, we pulled back from having one parameter driving the crux of our decisions for being remote. And in this case, as it relates to competition, we have one parameter, which is being remote, as that one trigger for pulling back from competition. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can provide the administration, the safety team, whatever it might be, some flexibility to react in a changing situation to potentially allow that competition in a remote scenario, if that made sense to the safety team. That's all I had.
Thanks. Dan?
Yeah, just one or two ideas that occurred to me, and it's worth repeating because we're further on in the discussion. But this athletics health and safety plan was presented to the health and safety team, and they concurred that with the contents of the plan. They basically, just to be certain we're on the same page, they basically agree with the protocols and they agree with some of the conditional requirements of this, and also the rank ordering of the different kinds of competition as being more or less contact based. Is that pretty true? The health and safety team came to support or agree with this plan as presented?
I think the team, there's some differing opinions on certain parts of it, Dan. From the highest level of safety and lowest level of risk. I think not having any contact sport student athletes attending school was a discussion. So there is, with all of the screening that we're doing for the sports, we have thermometers for all the coaches and things, and they have been doing screening, but it's definitely, we need help from families to be careful and do the right thing away from school and away from sports, as we do all families. And you drive around our community and see youth sports occurring at this time. So we have a lot of activity happening, but to the question, I think there were some different views on it. There were some different views on football as well. So not every detail had full agreement of everybody. But I think, to move forward with a plan, people did weigh in on all the protocols we have in place. So I don't think there's anything with unanimous stamped all over it, Dan. Right. We took all the input, vetted it out, had the discussions, and then developed this. Yeah.
So, and it's fair to say there was generally a majority opinion was in favor of going forward with this. In other words, 51% or more of the safety team would concurred with it overall. They might not have gotten everything they wanted, but for the most part, they were in agreement with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Nodding your head.
Gene, I mean,
Yes, I think that's 100% accurate. I would even say more than 50%.
Yeah. But that is really what, in terms of my support, that's a big piece. I'm inclined to go along, particularly with the medical practitioners and the epidemiological perspective on this, and then our accomplished nursing staff too, who have come out of much. When I think about these kinds of questions and decisions, having worked briefly in a medical setting as opposed to a school setting, they are far more rigorous about these protocols than we are typically. I mean, in a medical setting, they can be far more specific regarding their expectations, and they do literally have a protocol they are to follow. It's an evidence-based approach in their perspective. So they're going to get the outcomes that they want by following the procedures that are in play. So should they support this plan in general, and it involves the medical practitioners and the epidemiological academicians, then I generally find it worthy of my support and as a board member. The other thing that occurs to me is, are we talking about all of the scheduled sports for the entire year, or will we come back and revisit this, let's say, before we get to wrestling or before we get to some of the indoor track for the winter? I mean, what are there other decisions that will be asked to address later, or does this represent all of the competitive schedules for the entire year?
day by day, Dan. I don't want to get ahead of myself right now.
Athletics would say a year, right?
Well, I just want to be, in terms of, as we're talking about this, because right now we are behind the curve in terms of giving this, our athletes the opportunities that other districts have provided for, and we're just catching up through our planning process. And I think that makes perfect sense in terms of some of the other larger issues we've had to address before we got to this point today. But I wanted to see where we were in terms of thinking about future schedules. And as Scott was saying earlier, it's to be determined. It'll depend on how things go with the virus. It'll depend on what competitions are coming up, which other teams will be, what other the condition or status of other school districts at the time. There are a lot of moving parts in this, apparently.
I think the indoor and outdoor feature of winter sports and fall sports was the reason why we didn't make this a longer plan, because we would have to really look at that piece differently.
That makes sense. Thank you. Thanks, Gene. And thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Dan. Lori?
Hi, thank you for calling on me again. Just a couple more questions. So we have a policy about not having contact sports compete when we're remote. Do we have a policy about our partner schools and whether they're remote, and whether we will participate in competition with them if they are remote because of high incidence?
No, we don't, but we know that we are now the complete reverse of where we were when we discussed this in the summer. Right. Nobody's even remotely, but we don't. I think that would be, as I was talking with the team earlier, I think we reserve the right to pull the plug on something if there's a safety concern, whether it's related to the virus or weather or what have you. And I think we would want to employ common sense if something happened and a team at another school had an outbreak of cases and then said they still wanted to play. I think we would have the right to pull the plug on that one.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. And you actually led to my other question, which was, have any other districts expressed concern to us about our community numbers?
Mrs. Bedell, I can speak to that. We were at a meeting last week in Shippensburg with all of the Mid-Penn athletic directors, and I can say to an individual, there was no concern shared. This was as some of the numbers were turning for us. And to your earlier question, I would say that some of the ADs even offered their support, saying, we can come to you. I didn't get a chance to offer that before, but some of the neighboring Mid-Penn athletic directors have said, if it makes it easier, we can come to you. So it's almost unanimous support to play these games. And some of them, can't speak for all of them, certainly, but some of them have said we'd be happy to come to State College to make that easier.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Other board member questions? Thought I saw Laurel's hand up, but
Nope, Lori asked the same question I was going to.
okay. All right. We'll need to make a motion on each of these items. But I just want to make sure I got all the Q&A first. Scott?
Just quickly, is there a reason that we have two separate motions for the same plan?
Well, one of them we put on just because of the retroactive nature with golf. And,
Oh, got it. No, that's fine. That's what I needed. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the item E then is a motion to approve the fall athletics health and safety plan for non-contact sports as shown in item 7A.
Fazzard, so moved.
Please, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion before we move to public comment?
And I think you have public comment probably for both coming at you by looking at some of our guests. I know we have a bunch of coaches on the list. So I don't know.
Yeah, if we could, maybe we can ask to confine public. I see Kyle has his hand raised first. If we could confine public comment for each item, if possible. So this would be regarding the motion on non-contact sports at this time. Kyle?
This isn't really so much a question. That's why I saved it for after Q&A. But I put out a kind of informal poll for high school students on social media. And it might be a biased sample, but almost 90% said that they would rather not see sports resume in the fall. And that includes some athletes are in there. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up is I had a couple people from the girls tennis team contact me and say that, speaking for themselves and other people from other sports teams as well, they thought that playing was a bad idea, but they did not want to bring that up in public comment at board meetings because they thought there would be repercussions from the coach. And so I did just want to bring that up, both to say that it seems that high schoolers, aside from student athletes, overwhelmingly do not want sports to resume. And then also to say that the people we get talking in public comment obviously have valid viewpoints, but there might be a slant there, and there are a lot of people who it seems don't want to, are scared to say they don't want to play because they're scared of the coach. So that's just something probably to keep in mind.
Bob or Will, is there a good route for student athletes that may have concerns about competing with other schools? What would be the best route for them to express those concerns?
Obviously, if they and their parents have a concern, sitting down and talking to the coach. I mean, the students have really been working hard through the summer and the fall. I mean, I asked my child who plays one of the fall sports, and she said she and all her friends were really excited for the potential opportunity. With that said, that was only one kid that I asked. I didn't put a poll out on social media, or I would defer to what coaches are feeling and having a team conversation with the kids. I know most of the fall coaches, and I would defer to the kids, and I've not heard directly from any kids other than that they wanted to have experiences. So I don't know how to answer that, Kyle. I don't know who you polled or how valid it was or things, or who all the kids were, and I'm not going to expect them to come to me, but I think coaches are typically have more personalized relationships with students in their teams. Sometimes it's the assistant coach who's got a little closer relationship with kids, but so I don't know what sports it is, and so it's tough to answer that right now.
Yeah, and again, it might not be I'm sure not an entirely representative sample, but I'm just wondering if there can be a way for kids on sports teams who don't want to play but also don't want to attach their name to saying they don't want to play to say so anonymously.
Well, I would just add too that athletics, all of our extracurricular programs are exactly that. They're optional and student choice. So if any student or family would not feel comfortable playing, that would be their choice. And then if they do have concerns, obviously I would encourage them to speak. If they don't feel comfortable with their coaches, to our athletic department, to any administrator, we would be glad to have those conversations.
I would just bring up as the last thing, there's, I'm sure, a chance that kids who aren't seniors this year, if they choose not to play this year because of COVID, I don't know how that would affect their chances of being put on the roster in following years. But yeah, thank you for addressing that.
If I would just add, if there's to Dr. Stout's point, obviously it's a choice, and we have high numbers of participation this year, actually higher than we've had in years past. The number of student athletes have registered for their sports teams, that number is up this year, and it's a very healthy number. So if that's any indication as well, there's a strong desire for a lot of our student athletes and families to participate.
Great,
and
thank you.
Just to clarify, so one of the points in the safety plan was regarding about making sure that we're accommodating students with particular concerns. So one of those would probably be if they were concerned about the safety of playing this year, how that impacts their ability to participate in the team in following years, that we would be sensitive to that.
Yeah, Amber, I would just say zero impact. I mean, there are some athletes at the professional level that are opting not to participate. So obviously we would honor, respect any athlete or their family that chooses that, and there would be no repercussions in subsequent years.
Okay. Yeah, I think making sure.
Amber, can I make one additional comment there?
Mm-hmm.
There's certainly no best fit line, but I think we've got a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different athletes. Some of those include families who have asked us to pursue different ways of participating in the sports this year, whether that's reduced number of practices, whether that's virtual as a student athlete that wants to be part of the team, but participate virtually. And so we are trying to meet students and families where they are with a diverse approach to allowing them to engage in whatever way fits best for their family. So we've got several student athletes that have said, hey, this may not be for me this year, but can I participate virtually? Can I talk to the coach, our strength coach, senior, about ways to improve while I'm not necessarily on the field, in the court, on the track, so on and so forth. So we are trying to be pretty diverse in our approach to making sure we're engaging athletes and meeting them where they are in the midst of a pandemic.
That is so good to hear, because for those students, being able to stay connected, I'm sure, is so important. Dan?
Yeah, I am really glad to hear Lauren's, Will's, and Chris's comments about the empowerment, if you will, of the athletes or the players to find their own level of comfort within this system. And I would ask that among those three sets of ideas, if I could just encourage you to make those things explicit and get the word out, perhaps through the coaches, perhaps through Mr. Weekland's office, but certainly to make and so the families know as well that this is not necessarily one size fits all approach to this. We have a health and safety plan that we think is effective, but that individual players and their families need to find their own level within that. So I would hope that you will make these comments, put this together into a form or format that could be shared with families, and that would walk them through at least how they might request, not anticipating every possible request, but how they might request for a conversation with their coach, or if that doesn't work out well with the athletic department, to try to find this way in which our individual students can fit their own needs within this plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Scott?
I'm sorry, I thought I lowered my hand. I was just going to say what Will said about these being optional. Sorry.
Okay. Laura?
Yeah, thanks. And I wanted to also thank Kyle. We have a student representative for a reason. And we know that, you know, as you said, it's not every student that you talked with. I didn't hear you say that you did, but I do appreciate your sort of being willing to go out. And I think that's really what we wanted from our student rep, is to do those occasional polls, talk and bring us ideas, especially when there might be things that people feel less comfortable saying. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Any other board questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to open it up to public comment, and just to keep in mind that the motion on the table for public comment at this time is in regard to non-contact sports. And I will start with Rebecca Donahue. And I'll just, before everyone starts, let me just note, 2 minutes per person. We'll display a timer since we may have a lot of public comment. And public comment at this time on this motion. And for everyone, there is an unmute button when it's your turn in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So, and each person, if you could introduce yourself and where you reside in the district when you begin. And Ms. Donahue, your turn is now. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Donahue. I reside in Ferguson Township. I've been the head coach of the girls cross country team for the past 15 years, and I'm also a teacher in the district. I'd like to thank the board for their relentless hard work and devotion to the district and for this opportunity to speak tonight. I am in support of all sports moving forward with starting official competitions. We all know the countless physical and mental benefits of interscholastic sports for students, and if done safely, following the district's protocols, they can be even more beneficial during the pandemic. The safety plan that the athletic department and district has set in place, which all coaches and athletes have been following for weeks, some even months, is incredibly safe. And I feel confident in saying that it is likely one of, if not the safest in the state. I am confident in saying this because we have had 0 cases throughout this time. The way in which our cross-country practices run and are organized is identical to how a cross-country competition operates. The State College girls cross-country team has year in and year out been a top 5 team in the state, counting all schools and all divisions. Every year throughout my 15 years as coach, we have multiple girls move on to compete at the collegiate level. Having the opportunity to compete this fall will alter the course of our student athletes' lives for the positive. If we can safely provide this opportunity, which I believe we are, we must. For months, we have been implementing the district's health and safety strategies. We are absolutely ready to take this next step. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. It's always helpful to hear from those who are so directly involved. Okay, and again, this is related to the non-contact sports. Our athletic director was just letting me know that we have a few students who are here, and I will go ahead and prioritize student comments. If there's any students who would like to make a comment in regard to the non-contact sports motion. If there's any students here who would like to raise their hands, and I do have a short list of students who are here. Chris, do you see any of their hands raised?
Yes, Brady.
In regard to non-contact sports that you're aware of?
Yes, Brady Bigger is here.
Okay, Brady, if you would like to speak, you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and we'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
Hi,
Hi, Brady, I'm not able to hear you.
First off, I'd like to thank the school board for again letting the student athletes play a role in the ongoing decision regarding fall sports. We appreciate the countless hours you spend ensuring we have a safe and successful high school experience. We are also extremely grateful for allowing us to continue to practice while abiding by the updated interim plan. Although I think it goes without saying, the boys cross country team will do whatever is necessary if it means we can move forward with our season. In the past few weeks, we've strictly adhered to the protocols put forth by the athletic department. We will continue to do so. Safety has always been a priority at State High, and we are dedicated to protecting ourselves and our community. This past spring, when sports were first canceled, my fellow runners and I were disappointed. To a degree, part of us had been taken away, at least for a time. I felt especially bad for the seniors. However, what kept us motivated and focused was the possibility of having a cross-country season. We've been training hard all summer, and that consistency has provided stability and kept us engaged in the other facets of our lives, especially our education. We've had something we can look forward to, goals to work towards, and added on to that, we've stayed in great physical shape. Taking sports away again would take a toll on our mental, physical, social, and emotional health. We'd be left feeling rather lost. Although we will respect whatever decision is made, we're confident that there's some way our season can continue. We love our sport, and we understand the necessity of our community's safety as well. However, we don't believe those two things to be mutually exclusive. We don't have to simply survive through this crisis.
I think we lost you. Brady, it looks like you're muted. Oh, if we're not able to get you back, thank you so much for your comments. Chris, do you see other student athletes?
Yeah, Allison Clemson, are you available? See, you're here. Yes.
Okay.
She's
Allison, if you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you would have 2 minutes.
Can everybody hear me? First?
We can, thank you.
Okay. So my name is Allison Clemson. I'm a part of the varsity cheer team. So on behalf of our team, we would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about the meaningfulness of continuing our season and the things that we love most about cheerleading. This statement is a collection of ideas representing the members from our entire cheerleading program. Right now, we are facing a time where decisions are being made in an effort to ensure everyone's safety, but I truly believe that giving us a chance to participate in sports while maintaining safety protocols is possible. We have
Oh, Allison, I think we lost you. I'm so sorry.
Cheerleading has also taught all of us time management between practice, school, homework, and work. This is a fundamental skill that we will be able to utilize for the rest of our lives in situations beyond athletics. So thank you for hearing our perspectives and ideas during my time. My teammate Emma Limegrover will talk more about what this means to us, but that is all I have to present for the time being.
Thank you, Allison. Hi, Emma. Hi, Emma. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes as well.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right, so I'm Emma Limegrover. I'm also a part of the varsity cheerleading team, and I'm a senior at State High. Just to go off a little bit of what Allison was saying, cheerleading has taught us work ethic and how to be a leader. For some of us, practice is a safe space, an outlet for us to do something we enjoy. Sports in general help keep student athletes active in so many ways that are deeper than just the surface level. Sports keep us motivated and active. We go to practice, we do workouts, and we put in hours of work. Competing and participating in sports activities help to keep us motivated to be the best versions of ourselves. Cheerleading pushes us to continually improve and become strong, dedicated, hardworking men and women. Without cheerleading, the seniors this year would not be able to win another district championship, compete in Florida for another national title, and be on the mat one last season. This emotion, anticipation, and satisfaction of performing is irreplaceable and something we as athletes aren't prepared to give up. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts and feelings. We appreciate all the work you're doing to keep all of our students and staff safe. We know that if you give us the chance, we can continue to conduct our sports safely. Sincerely, the State College Cheerleaders.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, ladies. I think we also have Molly Solo here with her hand up.
Hi, Molly. If you would like to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
So my name is Molly, and I'm a senior representing the State College Girls Cross Country team. And I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you've put in to make our practices possible this fall. Our practices have helped many students so far this year by being able to stay connected and run with teammates, which is a huge motivator for running. Being able to meet has also helped with stress relief and staying active while also keeping socially distant and following all of the COVID-19 protocols. The girls cross country team has been extremely aware of making sure to wear our masks and staying spaced out during our runs. We also run in small groups of no more than 8. As a non-contact sport, girls cross country should be allowed to compete because these precautions will still take place off campus and at official meets. Some safety measures taken in meets have been staggered starts, limited numbers of competitors, and strictly enforced mask wearing. So we are looking forward to another successful and safe season. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments, Molly.
I think that is all I see as far as our non-contact sports student athletes here that have their hand up or reached out. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Then our
Ellie Moran has just put her
Ellie,
hand.
I see her hand up now. Ellie, if you would like to speak, you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'd have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm Ellie Morar, and I'm a senior on the girls tennis team, and I'm also a captain this year. And our coach asked me to come on and talk about the team thoughts. And the consensus in the girls team is that we're all comfortable with practicing and having scrimmages with our team. But many of the girls have been talking, and we're all really concerned about traveling and having teams come here for competition. We think that opening up our isolated community, which is would be the small tennis team, to more germ pools would put us at a really high risk. And there is assurance that it would be safe, but there's also so many variables that we can't really account for. And for lots of us right now, we're trying to value long-term health and happiness along with health of our community, which could be risked by traveling. So it's we have to, for the tennis team at least, we've all been discussing and weighing the risks, and a lot of us aren't entirely sure if the risks are worth having high school sports. And thank you.
Ellie, thank you for your comments. Okay. Are there any other student athletes who in non-contact sports then? Chris, do you see anyone who?
I do not see any others in our non-contact sports category.
Okay. Then I will open it up to others who have their hand raised. Chad Wade, I see your hand raised. Oops. Ari Giros, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ari.
Okay, I have 3 things that I want to talk about, if we can.
Okay, well, this public comment time is regarding the fall athletics health and safety plan for non-contact sports, but we will also have further public comment time at the end of the meeting.
Can we please? That would be great.
Okay, so if you're not here to talk about the non-contact sports, hang in there and we'll get to the other public comment time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
We're done.
Okay, Joe Nastasi, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hey, I appreciate the time here. One to first, my name is Joe Nastasi. I'm a parent in the district, coach in the district, been here for a while. Really want to say thanks to, Bob and Chris, Will and Lauren. You guys really put a lot of hard work, and I don't think you get the credit you deserve. So we really appreciate that. This basically goes to sports in general. So this is basically for both contact, non-contact, for the vote tonight. And I'd just like to say that number one, we've stressed it a lot, and it's choice. And I don't think anybody can deny that. If you choose to, you choose to. If you don't, you don't. That's definitely an option. And the overwhelming support is unbelievable by our community, student athletes, parents, and so on. Just a couple of things. I just really want to stress that in these times we have such big issues going on in the world, that one thing that brings us all together in one common goal is sports. It unifies us all. Okay. And I can't stress that enough, the importance of sports and unity in the crazy world that we're living in right now. And the second point I'd like to make is, if we're really trying to make a difference, really as a board trying to make a difference for the better, we really have to look at the equity of the situation and see the equality of what the kids of privileged backgrounds versus maybe that don't have the resources, and when it turns into a pay to play situation. One more thing I want to just say briefly was, I think Scott made an outstanding point about being fluid in this and giving the administrators an opportunity to make changes as necessary. Again, let's just remember the unity that this really brings our community, student athletes, and parents, and something in a time that we really, really need it. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nasasi. Stephen Williamson, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Steve Williamson. I live in College Township. I have an elementary school child and a middle school child. Currently, the school district is spending over $200,000 just this fall on training athletes, but many of us need to pay to educate our youngest students. So much for a free and appropriate public education. The school district is allowing in-person training for athletes, but not allowing in-person education for our youngest students that need it the most. The school district is allowing athletes to be without a mask, less than 6 feet from each other, and under physical exertion, while our youngest students can't be educated wearing a mask more than 6 feet from their teacher in lower numbers than most teams. It is the height of hypocrisy for school board members to tell the community we have to be all in, and then grant exceptions. You cannot just care about the mental, emotional, and physical health of one group. It must be all of them, and it must be comprehensive. When some board members are more worried about cutting athletes from sports teams than the failure of remote learning to educate our youngest students, we have a bigger problem than a virus. You canceled school with no evidence in schools, but athletes are granted an exception on this. As a 2-year captain of a track and field team at a small Division I university in Pennsylvania, I value sports tremendously. My issue is that the school board and the health and safety team are not applying the same standards allowed for sports to education. Any further decision on athletics should be tabled until the students are back in school for at least 1 week to prove the district's commitment to education. You made an exception for golf. Why can't there be an exception for kindergarten, first grade, second grade? These are the kids who need to be in school, not in front of a computer screen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Williamson. Okay, so seeing no more public comment, then we'll have a roll call vote. And I'm sorry, Lynn Shayla. Lynn Shayla, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
I didn't really have a formal say, and I had some questions, but I wanted to thank Mr. O'Donnell, the board, and the athletic personnel, because I've been listening to your board meetings, and they are so long, and you are explaining things that I was unaware of, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, and down to the fine detail. I did want to comment that I have been listening to Dan and Scott, and I agree that we really need to keep this fluid to be able to be flexible, because the environment's constantly changing. And I know that you have spent so much money to keep our kids safe that I have actually changed my mind and feel that the kids are safer in school and my daughter is safer playing sports. And I'm sorry, my daughter's a junior and she's playing volleyball. And I've been following the PIAA and realizing that there's only 25 people allowed indoors, and I'm hoping that the governor will change that. But I did see in the rules that they are allowing, which would only allow like 6 girls from the team to be able to play. But the PIAA is allowing other teammates to be in another room, and that the officials are supposed to give them time to do substitutions, because in volleyball, I feel that, and in all sports, there should be a backup player. But the other thing that I was concerned about is, I'm running out of time, but one thing that I'm concerned about is I'm fully support for driving my daughter to sports, but not all times can I do it. And I've had other parents drive my daughter, but currently we are driving other people's daughters to sports. And I just feel that if the team practices together, I wish that they could ride the bus together if they do not have a ride to sports, because I want all kids to be able to play, whether they're like me and have a parent that would be able to take off work and drive them, or not be able to take off work and still be able to play. The other thing that I was concerned about is, I know Kyle said he did a poll and my daughter was none aware of it. So my time's up, but I want to thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shayla. And just to be clear, we are still offering coach bus transportation, but in order to better socially distance students, we are asking for parents who are able to help with transporting students, not that we are not offering bus transportation. Okay, any other public comment on this item? Okay. Any other board member questions or comments before we vote? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion has passed. Then item F on the agenda is a motion to approve the fall athletics health and safety plan as pertains to contact sports. And this is also shown in item 7A.
Duffy still moved.
Lee is second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any board member questions or discussion? Scott?
Yeah, thank you. So here's my question. It goes back to the base of my questions and comments previously. So I found the guidance for the 2020 National Federation of State High School Associations for their opening schools. And they have a list of the low, moderate, and high risk categories. Interestingly, tennis is in the moderate risk category, as is volleyball. However, they both have an asterisk beside them that says they could potentially be considered lower risk with appropriate cleaning of equipment and use of masks by participants. So I'm assuming that for tennis, which is listed here as moderate, but that we listed as low, that we determined that that would be the case. And I'm curious why that was not the case for volleyball, because it is my understanding that they are cleaning the balls regularly, and that the girls volleyball team is wearing masks, not just while they are on the sidelines, but also while they are competing in practice at this time. So I'm just raising that question to see if we can get that considered for a low contact or low risk.
I can speak on the tennis for sure, in the fact that the safety modifications were put in place by USDA and the PIAA was very aggressive in eliminating contact or shared contact items. So tennis players don't even share the same ball. So if it's hit they return it without even making any physical contact. Should there's absolutely no shared equipment, no touching of any type of shared equipment, and the modifications they put in place allowed us to lower that to the low level. And as far as volleyball is concerned, there are two items here. There's still shared contact. There's still shared balls. One team hits a ball and another team hits a ball before cleaning. And the other element is the fact that they are indoors. So for that reason, we remain with volleyball in the moderate.
Right. Amy?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to make the point that Chris made, that with volleyball being indoors, it really differentiates itself from tennis. And I'll leave it at that. I will say I'm very comfortable with the categories that the team has chosen. I think they're appropriate. I think that many of the sports that fall in the moderate category, when we're talking particularly about field sports, there are often players scrabbling for a ball, whether it's field hockey or soccer or other things. And in those moments, it's a physical exertion effort, and they are side by side working at that goal. And so it raises it to a different level. And when we talk about contact sports in this context, we're not just talking about physical altercations with one another. We're just talking about close physical proximity. And I think that's what puts them into this category, is more about the proximity of players to one another over periods of time. So that's it. Thanks.
Kyle?
Thank you. So there are just a couple of points that I wanted to kind of bring up, which is one, and this is largely just things that I've gotten as feedback from friends of mine and just other kids, especially at the high school, which is that a lot of kids do feel, me included largely, that if the district doesn't think it's safe enough to allow kids to actually go to school and learn, there's nothing necessarily indicating that it's then safe for them to play volleyball or another indoor sport like that. And I've had a lot of people say that the focus should be getting kids back to school, and we shouldn't be squandering our like, if we have a limited number of contacts that we're allowed to have and we have a limited number of exposure that we're going to give kids in the district, we should be doing that with academics and not with athletics. And then so the feedback on that I've received is overwhelmingly in favor of not proceeding with at least contact sports for the fall. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up was that I have heard from a bunch of kids, and it's more now than it was an hour ago or so, because I think that some kids have been listening to the board meeting when I first brought it up, that there are student athletes who have said who aren't seniors, who have said that they're worried that if they don't play this year, or if they speak out saying that they think that sports should not play in the fall, that will hurt their playing time for future seasons, or that would hurt their chances to make the team in future seasons. And so I really think it's probably worth it to have a way to allow student athletes to submit concerns like that anonymously, because I know we were talking about how coaches would never do that. But like I've played on sports teams, and even if by the book coaches aren't supposed to do that, that's not necessarily always how things actually end up working out. And so I think it would be really, really useful if we could even just push this decision back by, say, a week, and allow time for student athletes to submit concerns anonymously if they want to. And if they're nervous for whatever reason about saying things publicly, because I've had a lot of people say that they don't want to talk publicly about it because they're worried about retribution from coaches. And so I don't know how hard it would be to push this decision back a week or so, but if we could, I think that would allow a lot of people to have their voice heard, or maybe fewer than I'm guessing, but it would certainly allow people to have their voice heard one way or the other on whether or not we should go forward.
Kyle, I think pushing the season back another week would be very detrimental to getting our sports seasons in, for sure. Just wanted to share that with you.
I think, I don't know how anonymously you could help someone, but I do think parents can call and have a discreet discussion with, if the family's concerned and they don't want to have they want to check in with the athletic department through the ADs to have a conversation that would be confidential on how they might best proceed. You know, there's one sport we heard of tonight. If the team really doesn't want to compete, that's a done deal. We don't have to send them on a bus. If the team doesn't want to compete and they want to continue with the interim plan, like we heard from one of the tennis student athletes, that's not a problem. But I think if someone feels pressure about a situation and they want to talk through it, I think that would be my advice, Kyle. I'm not sure how you could take an anonymous note and understand how to help that person without it's tough. I don't have a solution for that one other than I think Mr. Weekland and Mr. Crispel would need to get involved with the parents behind the scenes, or the parent and the player set up a meeting with the coach if they're comfortable enough.
Our door's always open.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I do want to support Kyle in the things that he's saying. We've often talked about that students in vulnerable positions can find it challenging to raise concerns. And while these are burgeoning young adults, they still have a lot of skill development ahead of them. And so, and they may also have challenges speaking to their parents. So I appreciate Dr. O'Donnell's comments. I do think that families that came to the ADs would certainly be embraced and worked with in terms of achieving a good outcome for their student. But we also have to acknowledge that for some students, taking the route through their parents may not be feasible. I hope, I just say at this public meeting, I hope those students will go directly then to the ADs, because I do have confidence that Lauren and Chris would work with them to find a good outcome. But I do want to support what Kyle said. I have connections to sports too. And I think while we all want to say, want to hold our community to the highest ideals, the reality sometimes on the ground is not always 100% what we'd like it to be. Or even just the perception from the student's perspective may be concerned that would be an outcome, whether it's legitimate or not. And that's a reasonable concern for them to have. So I think it's a really realistic problem, Kyle, and I'm really glad you brought it up and raised it. And I think we do have to give it full credit. I do think putting off this decision, though, is problematic for the rest of the students and the families that need to make decisions moving forward. So I hope that those students are listening and that they do make some efforts to, because I do think there's adults out there that want to help them. So thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Concur. Dan?
Yeah, I also want to acknowledge Kyle's contribution. Kyle, this is really helpful to offer the concerns and the insights that you're providing about the nature of competitive sport and the disincentives for individual players to speak up and the fear that they may have regarding loss of eligibility in the future if they act on their concerns at this point in their school careers. I think that those things and your understanding of those relationships, I think, is really helpful to us who are a few more years on in age. But I do want to say that I think this is we sometimes, Kyle, you wouldn't know this. Well, you will learn this if you hang around for a while. We have in the past sometimes had conversations with people representing the athletic programs regarding disconnects that can occur sometimes between the coaching staff and the players. And we've had to kind of find our way through those kinds of challenges in the past. And so this does come up. These kinds of considerations do come into play. And I guess I keep going back to the importance of having an open environment for communication, and for starters, between the players and their coaches. And coaches should be willing to invite feedback from their players regarding the concerns. Coaches should be inviting feedback from their players about any concerns they have about competition. And it ideally should start there. But then at the same time, the players and their families, through the work of the athletic director and others, can make it clear to families that the lines of communication ought to and are open, ought to be and are open. So it's really important that we have these open discussions about this, and that among other things, I would hope that players are held harmless in terms of their concerns about their safety and in terms of their competing in future seasons if they choose to opt out this year. I don't know how to assure that in terms of how to assure that somebody who is placed themselves in that position certainly can't believe they'd be guaranteed a position in the future in competitive tryouts. But I think that in good faith, they should be provided some assurance that the system will not in any way intentionally exclude them from future competition if they, in good faith and honestly, are just communicating their discomfort and taking risks with their own health. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call on Kyle one more time, and then anyone else that would like to speak.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to go to what Dr. Duffy just said. I think he's totally right, and that it's really important to have those lines of communication open. But I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how possible that is, because I certainly know there are plenty of petty coaches at State High, and I haven't happened to play for any of them, but I have friends who tell me that they are. And I'd love to say that coaches aren't going to be petty like that, but I think the reality, just as a high schooler, is that even if the letter of the book, like the letter of the law, says that, or in this case, board policy says that no one will face any negative consequences for not playing this year, and no one will face any negative consequences for speaking out and saying that they don't want to play and they don't want the team to play. I've played for my share of petty coaches in the past in club sports and little league and what have you, and I just wish that there was a way for people who didn't feel comfortable making their concerns public to their coach, or even public in a public space, because they think it'll negatively affect them in the future. I just wish there was a way for those people to go directly to someone, whether it be the athletic directors, administration, school board, whatever it is, without their name attached. And then I think we'd get a way better sense of what student athletes in particular actually think about this.
Yeah, I would also suggest a school counselor. They can help them with that conversation and how to communicate that information.
That's a good point, Jean. Thank you for that. Scott?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a personal experience here because, I kind of feel, I'm not saying it's intentional, but, the coaches are kind of getting drugged through the mud a little bit about maybe they're going to have repercussions. And all I can tell you is, my daughter is a volleyball player who chose not to play this year and specifically went and talked to her head coach, Chad Waite, and let him know. And Chad's first comment was, well, I hope you'll think about coming back next year. You'd be welcome back. So, there's at least 25% of the non-contact or the contact sports that I can say with direct knowledge that would not be the case. So I just think it's problematic when we try to cast this broad net over our coaches and athletes as if there's some problem that probably doesn't exist.
Well, I think Kyle was, I don't know if he was trying to say that it was the case with all coaches, but that in case it was the case in some situations, to make sure that students were aware of other ways of communicating.
Yeah, if I can clarify that, most coaches at State High for sure are great and do a great job and really help add to kids' lives positively. And I've had experience with some of those coaches who are fantastic, but there are also people who are even subconsciously who could just be petty about this. And I'm just worried that since there are student athletes who are concerned that their coach might be petty about that and might punish them in the future, that just having an open line like that would be useful. And then we could really see whether or not it's true that there are a lot of kids who are worried about that.
Right, Kyle. And it might even just be a perception on that student's part that they're, that they're overly worried that their coach will not be supportive. And it may very well be the coach would be totally supportive, just like Scott's daughter's experience was. But if a student has that trepidation, then that colors everything, whether they speak up.
For sure, yeah. But I didn't mean to impugn all state high coaches or anything like that, because most of them are absolutely fantastic. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Lori?
I just want to say, I don't think it's ever a bad idea to have clear lines of communication for students. We've had this conversation with other student groups about places they can go when they feel like they don't know who else to go to. And so just as a broad sort of way of thinking about things, I think we should always provide students with those mechanisms to share their concerns. So I appreciate that this was raised. So thanks, Kyle.
Okay. Okay. Any other board questions or comments before voting? Okay. Then I'm going to move to public. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to move to public comment then. I see Matt Lentall's hand raised. And if you would like to unmute yourself, and we'll get a timer going, and you'll have 2 minutes.
You have me?
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Matt Lentall. I'm the school counselor and head football coach at State College. I also have 3 kids in the Grace Woods Elementary School, where my wife is also a kindergarten teacher. Today, I stand with our players and families to advocate for their physical, mental, and emotional health. As a school counselor and football coach, I've always said that we will treat our players as people, students, and athletes in that order. Our football staff, and I can confidently say our entire athletic department, has never wavered from this person-centered approach. Our student athletes need us now more than ever, and frankly, we need them too. I heard the Pittsburgh Steelers head football coach Mike Tomlin speak about the unintended positive consequences of sports. Sports provides more than just opportunities to compete. For some, it is the physical benefits. For others, it is accessing a post-secondary opportunity that may have not been otherwise afforded on their academic achievements alone. For others, it is a mental health benefit, as they are connected to teammates via the social aspect that sports offer. So conversely, while we talk of these unintended positive consequences of participation in sport, we must also weigh the unintended negative consequences of not allowing our student athletes to participate in sports this fall. After having interacted weekly with our athletic department coaches this spring, I saw the impact of the loss that season had on our coaches and our student athletes. While this spring was terrible in so many ways with the outbreak of the coronavirus, it is significantly different from the outlook of our student athletes this fall. In the spring, our entire state was shut down. No one participated in school sports in Pennsylvania. While this was difficult, the scene is far different in PA now. Every school in our county and district has already competed. This creates a distinctly unique experience for our current fall student athletes, should they not have the opportunity to participate. While not playing when everyone is not playing is extremely hard, not playing the sport that you love when every other school in the county and in the district is playing is torturous. This would have a significant impact on our students on so many levels and in every sport. Our kids would be at a distinct disadvantage for post-secondary opportunities. However, my biggest concern as a school counselor would be the mental health of our kids should the cancellation of sports become the reality. Our football team consists of what I would argue is the most diverse population of students within our high school. Our football program has had roughly 20% students of color per year, numerous female students, students who are part of the LGBTQ community, students with IEPs and 504 plans, students who require a paraprofessional with them for practicing games, honor students with 4.73 GPAs, and we have students that only come to school because they have to in order to participate in sports. Our team consists of students who participate knowing that they may never play on a Friday night. We have students from 2-parent homes, students from single mother homes, single father homes, students from wealthy homes, and students who are searching for their next meal or a bed to sleep in that night. I can confidently say that there is no classroom in our district representing the incredible diversity that unites us on our field. All of these students have had a home within the State College football program. Despite the differences mentioned above, these student athletes unify in a collective way to work together, fight together, cry together in the most magical way that you could ever imagine. They form bonds that they never thought possible and that most of society would not understand. They live for each other. They sacrifice for each other. They love each other. I truly believe they need each other. I 100% know that we need them as coaches. We sacrifice spending time away from our own homes to help our student athletes to grow as if they were our own children. Our coaches across all sports will advocate for our student athletes today and always, not just until they graduate, but forever. This is the bond that is created during the experience of sport that culminates in the final season that the coach and player get to share together. Playing sports is not.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for your comments. We ran out of time, but thank you. And really enormous appreciation for all you're doing with students right now. Okay. Chris Weekland had asked if we could call on the students who have their hands raised first. So Chris, I'll let you go ahead and call on students who you see with their hands raised in the
Right.
chat.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We do have a couple that have signed up. They asked to speak. And I see Rebecca Bonas is here with her hand raised. Rebecca, if you'd like to join us, that'd be great.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. So hello, I'm Rebecca Bonas. I'm a senior this year, and I'm speaking on behalf of the State College field hockey team. I just want to start out by saying how grateful I am that I get to come and speak tonight, and just the opportunity that we've had the past few weeks to even have practice. And I just wanted to share a little bit about how the past few weeks have affected our team as a whole. So field hockey has been a really life-giving experience this year, more so since we've been full online. Coming to practice has been the best part of my day. Having social interaction outside of family and not over a screen has been really valuable for our team. We're high schoolers who need a break from school and something to motivate us. Looking forward to field hockey practice is one of the only things that pushes my teammates and I to stay on top of schoolwork, because at least I know that I have limited time and school comes first. So if I want to keep playing, I have to manage my time wisely, which I think is also the case for a lot of my teammates. In addition to providing kind of an escape from everyday problems and just the reality of this hard time that we're going through, practice helps keep our whole team active. That may not be the case if we were not playing. We sit in a chair all day and we don't always have the motivation to go out and be active. So practice really helps a lot of, at least the girls on our team, to go out and we very much understand the precautions that we need to take, and we're more than willing to take them. And we would just really love the chance to play. We love our team and we love the sport. And we just really like to play. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. And I see Stevie Gutoff is next and is present. Thank you, Stevie.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Hi, Stevie.
Hi, my name is Stevie Goff, and I'm a senior on the State High football team. I've had the honor to not only represent myself, but my teammates as well, as I speak in support of playing this season. As you've seen tonight and in previous meetings, my teammates and friends have emotionally and passionately spoke to you about why we want to play this season. I'm not one to have a desire to speak in these meetings, but I felt that I need to speak up. I've learned that if you believe very strongly in something, then you have to stand up and fight for it. I don't want to say years from now that I was quiet when our seasons were taken away from us. I've grown up in a football environment. My father's been coaching all around the state, and I've had the opportunity to be able to see from a very young age of how much of an impact football has made on all these players' lives. It's more than just a game, and I cannot stress that enough, since it appears that all of us feel this way. I don't think it's about you not wanting to believe this. It's more just about you not getting to see this. It's easy to make these observations from the outside, but when you're actually in the locker rooms, in the huddle, surrounded by what I call family, I know that would be a lot harder for you to come to these conclusions I fear you're coming to. I understand the concern that COVID-19 presents, but if us as players had any of that worry, we would not be up here right now fighting this hard for our season, especially when teams down the road are playing and suiting up their pads. That should be us. We want to play a competitive season just like they are right now. With the precautions that we have taken as a team, with the guidelines we have followed, we are more than confident not only with the new standards, but with the coaches and ultimately with ourselves, because we know how, if we do not take the proper precaution, we will lose the season for ourselves. However, we all have followed these standards to the fullest. I urge you to come to observe us at these practices, because as players, we do not take this task lightly. That being said, my biggest concern is on the mental health of us as athletes. For some athletes, these sports are our last chance to play on a team, and for some, it gives athletes a chance to play at a college level. Without getting to play, how do you expect these kids to get their name out there this season? The answer is that they will go elsewhere to play, such as recruiting camps, 7-on-7 camps, and other activities. It isn't just a theory, it's a fact, and that elsewhere does not follow the guidelines we follow and is nowhere as safe as the standard we have created here at State High. Not to add, we'd have to pay for these chances to get the exposure that we could have gotten here for free for a safer experience. For some, that could be easy to give money to these recruiters and get their name out there, but for some, that is not financially an option. This can all be avoided if we play this fall. Also, just like to add quickly, I appreciate Kyle made a poll to get an idea of the school's opinion, but none of my teammates or anyone I know ever heard of it. Since you brought it up, we are at currently a 71% yes in honor of playing fall sports. Just in case it doesn't bring that poll up again, I'd like you all to know that is where the poll is at now. Thank you.
Thank you, Stevie. Chris, do you see any other students you'd like to call on?
Yes, we've one more, Casey Secunda, who agreed to speak to us and signed up ahead of time. So Casey is also on. Thank you, Casey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Casey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Secunda, and I'm a senior and captain on the girls volleyball team. I speak on behalf of the volleyball team when I say that the opportunity to share our voice is very appreciated. My goal for volleyball has always been to put my teammates first, and this is why I'm speaking out today. Participating in state college athletics has taught me how powerful my voice can be and how important it is to use it. It has also taught me to be a leader on and off the court, not only in sports, but also in our community. I believe it is important to take note of how devoted and respectful each and every student athlete and coach has been in following the athletics health and safety plan. Our love for the sport has driven our actions throughout optional summer workouts, as well as the practices we've been fortunate enough to have thus far in the season. Traditionally, State College Girls Volleyball has assigned an incoming freshman to an upperclassman to act as their mentor for anything from volleyball to school to their personal life. Coming into high school can be very nerve-wracking for anyone, but personally, my transition was much smoother because I had upperclassmen who took me under their wing. I am hopeful our freshmen will get this opportunity for this beneficial guidance. It has been very difficult to understand how every other school on our Mid-Penn schedule is approved and playing, while we are not. How every other team in our district is approved and playing, while we are not. COVID-19 is present in our community and will continue to be. I hope you can see that with the precautions our health and safety plan has outlined, athletes can be safe and better together on our courts, fields, and courses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Casey.
That's all the athletes that reached out to me ahead of time that wanted to speak, but so I think we can probably go to the other public comment.
Thanks, Chris. Sharon Herlocker, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself, and then you would have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Sharon.
Hi. I'd like to first, I'm Sharon Herlocker. I have 3 kids, 2 that are in the district at Mount Nittany and the high school, and I live in the borough. I'm also the head field hockey coach. I'd like to speak to that I had 53 kids in May that wanted to play field hockey. Currently, we have 41. The 12 that decided not to play, many of them said it was COVID related. 2 of them, I am a writer. I am one of their people to write a letter of recommendation on their Common app. All of them are welcome. The underclassmen and are welcome to come back when they so choose. So I just want to make that point clear. And then I would like, if the school board members came to our practices, to tell you what you would see and what you would hear. You'd hear something like, Coach, field hockey is the only thing that I look forward to every day. Online school and not seeing my friends is just so hard. I can't have field hockey go away too. You'd hear, this past year and a half has been super hard for all of us. Sports and playing as a team is the one thing that seems, quote, normal now. As a student athlete, we all miss normalcy. And as of now, the only normalcy we have is sports. That was Lily, a 9th grader. And another 9th grader, Kara, reminded me that they haven't played field hockey since 7th grade because they lost 8th grade. A 10th grader, Hannah, says, a group of us were talking at practice about what would happen if our season was canceled. The first thing I thought of was, what would I do without my teammates? While school is very important to me, field hockey is also my passion. It's a major outlet for me to alleviate the stress and anxiety my schoolwork brings. These past 3 months have been so special to be with our team. Finally, I want to share what our seniors did. They did an Instagram post educating, taking your protocols and educating their teammates and the whole community of their age, saying about the safety protocols you put in place. They said, it's our job. The uncertainty doesn't mean you have to shut down and that you can't work hard. It just means that safety is our priority and we are all in this together. So I'm quite proud of our seniors. I'm quite proud of the field hockey team, and I hope you let us play.
Thank you, Sharon. Chad Wade, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
First, before I say anything, I have to say thank Scott for his sentiments. Truly appreciated. Chad Waite, reside in Port Matona. I have 2 kids in the district, one in 5th and one in 8th grade. I've been a health and phys ed teacher at Park Forest Middle School for 16 years. For 11 years, I've been the girls volleyball head coach. I'm also the boys volleyball head coach and the 9th grade boys basketball assistant coach. Having said all that, I think I bring a unique and all-encompassing lens to teaching students and kids participating in athletics. Thank you for your time, for allowing all of us to speak tonight. I want to give my perspective from the standpoint of what I've seen our student athletes do over the summer between optional workouts and then the interim plan, and the parallel I've seen with students in school this year. In both instances, the kids have done what is asked of them, and they've done very well. It's great to see the smiles and camaraderie with both of these groups. In addition to the academics and athletics, our students and student athletes are thriving at the opportunity of being together again. The decision to allow in-person school and athletics to happen has been a blessing to many families in the community, and we thank you for that. Our hope is that these can continue even with modifications. Finally, as a spring coach who lost the season with boys volleyball when the pandemic started, I want to reflect on what it has meant to me and my mental health, as well as my fellow colleagues and student athletes. All of our coaches and players have run the gamut of emotions because as much as we speak family with our teams, we live it too. We truly care about our kids, and we want to give them what they want in terms of being together as a team and competing. For our student athletes, these are the times when memories are made, not by winning state championships, but by the fellowship and joy that is shared within our family. Our kids know this because they've seen it from former players and now are living it themselves. We would appreciate it very much if you would provide us the opportunity to allow this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Isaiah Edwards, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a freshman in college now. I played for the state college football team last year, and I would just say like playing is like it's more than just like playing. I guess it's like it's a family bond thing that you have when you start playing. Like for me, my experience like going to school and waking up in the morning, it was for school, but it was so much to get to the practice at the end of the day, where you can go hang out with your friends and like anything bad that's happening, you could just get off your mind when you're on the field, because that's like the only thing that matters at that time. Even like when you're going through a rough time, the coaches, and you don't want to talk to anybody, like that's where the coaches are for. So like when football, it brings like that connection, I guess, to your coaches and to your friends, because you don't have like, there's nowhere else that you get like a bond like that when you get close. Talking about 2-a-days in the summer when you have to go to practice twice. Even just the games, the bus rides, those all bring like memories for you to play. And like everybody else said, that's representing contact sports. Like for me, I'm a person that like financially doesn't have it, or like academically I'm not the best. So like when you play a sport, you could kind of fall back onto that, and that can like get your way to college. And it's just easier for that. And if you take away that for the people that are playing football in their senior season that haven't had the opportunity yet to show who they are, who have been waiting since their sophomore year to like finally get a chance and break out, then their senior year to be canceled, it's just like, I feel like that's like almost unfair to them, even though because of this pandemic. But I feel like with other schools playing and the guidelines that I'm hearing about, like over Twitter and the news, I feel like we could get it done. So I feel like we should just give it a shot.
Thank you for your comments, Isaiah.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Carson Franks, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
All right. So I'm a senior on the state college football team, and I just want to say how special this season is to me and my guys. We've been working so hard for months, some of us years, for this season, and it'd be really heartbreaking if you took that from us. And I'd like to say that I love playing football for Stay High. I love playing for Coach Lintel and the other coaches, and I love playing again for my teammates and my brothers. And there's no other community or school that I'd like to represent under those lights on Friday nights. I love wearing the state on my chest, and I love wearing it with pride. I'd also like to say that there are futures on the line here. It's not about throwing the ball or making the most tackles. There's futures for our athletes in college through football. If you take away this season, you'll be stripping away the possibilities of a lifetime for these kids. It's not just a decision that will affect the next 6 months. It's the next 40 years. You know, I just can't put in the words how important this season is to us, and that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you for your comments, Carson. CP Price, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Connor Price. I guess I'm a former cross country athlete now. I just want to say that what Kyle's saying is true because I've gone through it firsthand this season. I thought I was going to have my senior year of cross country this year. But during the meeting we went to this year to put our names on the roster, I was wearing a mask and it didn't really seem like anyone else was following. There was a few kids, but that's besides the point. Basically what happened this year is I got one email about the season. Then after saying I couldn't come due to COVID-19 concerns, I stopped receiving any emails at all. So it just makes me feel like the coaches don't really care about us. And it seems like they made their own list of players they want on the team this year. And then about like player safety during all of this, right now we're one of the top 10 cities in the nation for new COVID cases. It's nowhere safe to where it should be like other school districts around us because they don't have almost thousands of new cases in the span of 2 weeks. So if you want your kids to be safe playing sports this year, having them, it's not a possibility. Just because they may get the virus and they're going to get through it doesn't mean they're going to be safe from it. The side effects of virus are numerous with heart conditions and lung conditions functioning right after recovery. So if you want them to be safe in college, playing football, playing whatever sport they're doing, having them play this year isn't going to help them at all. It's only going to hurt them more. And that's really all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Connor. Emily McDonald, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I am also a senior on the girls soccer team. I just had a couple comments to add. I know you've heard from a lot of different athletes about their emotional connection to their sport and the benefits to their mental health. And I think while that's very important, I would like to mention how safe personally I feel at practice with the time and effort my coaches have put into making us all feel safe. My head coach, Doug Bates, and all my other assistant coaches have been very strict with the guidelines, and we have been strict with ourselves. We wear our masks 100% of the practice except for putting our water bottles underneath our masks for water breaks. And while, yes, I do concede it is harder because of the physical exertion, it is definitely, we are willing to do that to have a season. I would also like to address Kyle's poll, as well as what Stevie said. I would like to address the bias in that poll because no one knew about the poll. We didn't have access to it. And so I think that's really important to recognize. And I would also recognize the sample size of the poll. We don't know how many kids voted in that poll. And I think Kyle put on his Instagram, it was barely under 100, while there's 2,400 kids close to at State High. And that brings me to my third point, is that I am also very concerned with my academic performance at State High, and we are all student athletes, and we are all regarding the student part of student athlete very highly as well. But it's also very important to recognize that while there's 2,400 children attending State High, there's not that many people participating in athletics, so it'd be a much smaller size, and there's less risk for transmission. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for your comments. Loki Howell, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, can you guys just hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Loki Howe, and I'm an alumni here. I recently graduated last year, and I played on the football team for, I've been playing State High football for like 8 years. And so I'm speaking on behalf on the football team. I know for me, football is a really big deal in my life and my family's life, and my little brother is still on this team. And it's really important to us because we moved here to State College to be on a better football team and to have better opportunity for football and to help with college. And football is more than a sport. Going to school every day could sometimes be stressful and difficult, but having football after school every day and having another family to go to was very helpful and helped a lot of us get through school and everyday life. There's a lot more that football does than give you a hobby. Being on the State High football team gives you confidence, a place that you're always to feel welcome, and it gives kids motivation to do better in school and in life and to want to be something in life. With the coaches on that State High football team, you're going to be taught life lessons. You're going to be taught to be a person and a student first, and then an athlete second. Once you're a State High little line, you're always a State High little line. And if you ever have anything negative on your mind or you're ever down, you can always go back to your second family. Being on this team creates a special bond, teammate to teammate and coach to teammate. Anybody is welcome, and it's just a healthy, safe, and great environment to be around. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Loki. Amy Schoen, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Amy Schoen, and I have a senior who is at State High, and he is a football player, and he's a wrestler, so you'll probably be hearing from me again. I am in support of all fall sports moving forward with competitive play beginning tomorrow, September 18th. These kids have been practicing 5 days a week for several months while following excessive safety guidelines with zero evidence of transmission related to sports. These teams have played thousands of games across the country, including the other 4 schools in Centre County, with also zero evidence of transmission due to sports. At least 2 other schools in Pennsylvania have developed plans which include 100% remote learning and fall sports. They understand the tremendous value of sports for kids, especially the over 700 State College area school district student athletes in fall programs. Creating a program that requires kids to choose between in-person learning and a sport is quite frankly ludicrous. The health and safety plan for the in-school learning already provides a lot of mitigation strategies necessary to remain in school, like for the high school with every other day learning, and social distancing and mask wearing. Moving forward with all fall sports makes even more sense under the current conditions. Kids are not in school, and the current influence of Penn State, they're unlikely to be for some time. There is no risk of exposing other non-sports playing kids, teachers, or staff. I've said it before and I'll say it again, you only get one chance to be a kid. You're a senior for 1 year in high school, and many friendships and memories and experiences are built on these high school years.
The majority of these kids will not play past high school, and they deserve a chance to play on Memorial Field just like the teammates that came before them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schoen. Trevon West, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I actually just recently moved to State College, and since there is a pandemic and you can only see about half the school, like when we were actually in school, I actually didn't know anyone except for one person. But football is something that has opened me up to a lot of friendships and a lot of brotherhoods that I've made actually very quickly. And I really feel like football is more than a game. And as some of the other people may have commented on, it's like a brotherhood. And even like people who do not play football, you can still connect with them because of it. And I feel like it's that way with a lot of different sports. And it's not even like something that's just to have fun. It teaches you a lot of different life lessons, like team type aspects. And I really feel like what the mother that came before me said is something that's like really true and really impactful. And I just wanted to comment on the side of it that it really has helped me make a lot of friends. And that's like the only people that I know are the people on the football team. So thank you.
Thank you, Trevon, for your comments, and welcome to our district. I cannot imagine moving to a new school in a situation like this, so I hope it goes as well as possible. Tyler Kaluza, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Tyler Kaluza. I'm a teacher and coach in the school district, but also a State High graduate and former student athlete. Currently coaching varsity football and have coached several other teams within the district over the last 5 years. I've seen the positive impact sports have had on our kids, coaches, families, community, etc. After receiving encouragement from our players and families, I feel the need to advocate for our student athletes because I truly care about them. Our young men and women across all fall sports should be able to compete against other schools this season. Over the past 2 months, our student athletes have done everything they've been asked to do to help mitigate the risk of the virus. We tell our football players to dominate what they can control, and they've done that throughout this entire situation. Yet they still kind of feel discouraged because they can't compete. I believe this is a decision that can and should be made by our parents and players. They understand the risk of COVID, but both parties are now experiencing the mental and emotional toll it can take. This decision is going to impact lives and could leave irreparable damage on the development of our young men and women if they cannot compete this fall. It's been valuable to listen to the two respected and highly qualified pediatricians in Dr. Drass and Dr. Huggins who have encouraged participation in sports, especially for the mental and physical well-being of our kids. I really welcome and invite all board members and those making these decisions to attend one of our practices. I guarantee you'll see smiles and laughter and kids working hard, but having fun at the same time. This is an escape from staring at the computer screen all day and an opportunity to enjoy the many aspects of sports, not just for the players, but for us as coaches as well. Even in the current situation, our kids are really hurting. They see the writing on the wall and you can see it in their eyes. And as a coach, you hurt for them. Think about how it must feel to be one of our kids right now and put yourself in their shoes, working and persevering all summer, but not being able to compete. This is especially true for our seniors who have sacrificed so much and worked so hard to have this opportunity. It's true for our parents as well, who have traveled to all the games and competitions over the last several years, only to see their child's senior year be taken away from them. I worry that we are ruining the experience of our student athletes in all sports by limiting the competition in which they have worked so hard to obtain. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of our student athletes.
Thank you, Tyler. Jackson Edwards, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. My name is Jackson Edwards. I'm currently a senior here at State High. I play for the football and basketball teams. And I just want to start off by saying that me personally, I am not choosing to pursue any secondary athletic opportunities, but I have many teammates and peers and classmates that are pursuing these opportunities. And without the opportunity to play this senior season, they are being denied the opportunity to go out and receive a secondary education. And I don't need to read off statistics, but I think we can all agree that without the opportunity to pursue a secondary education, students are very much less likely to succeed in life. And much like Carson Frank said earlier, it's more than just about the 4 years right now, but it's about the 40 years for the rest of your life. And by not giving students the opportunity to play is really lowering their opportunity for a successful life. And so when you make your decision tonight, I would just really like you guys to keep in mind that for the students that are out there, and not all students are in the same financial situation. Many are pursuing these opportunities because that they are in a much more dire financial situation with their family. And so please consider that when you make your decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jackson. Tucker Donahue, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name's Tucker Donahue. I'm a sophomore at State High, and I play for the State High football team. I'd just like to thank the board for letting me come on tonight. I really appreciate you guys letting the athletes be able to have a word in this decision you're having. But so I really want you guys to think about how much work athletes put into the football season and how much it means to them. It's not just something to go out and have some fun. It teaches life lessons, and there's a bond in the heart between players, and it changes players' life it just changes their life. And with all this remote schooling that's going on, kids are stuck in front of a screen, all day long. And being able to get out and exercise is really healthy for them and will greatly improve their performance in online schooling. And I just think that stripping this season away from us, especially seniors and even not seniors, can affect our futures very greatly. And it could just have a huge impact on our lives. And I really want you guys to consider that. And I also would like to say that Kyle's poll, no one I've talked to a lot of people on the football team, and none of them heard about the poll. I don't think it was very fair. And I hope that all these students and coaches and athletes coming on and voicing their opinion will really, open your guys' eyes to how much it means to us. This season means to us. So that's all.
Tucker, thank you for your comments. Conrad Moore, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Conrad Moore, and I reside in Ferguson Township. I'm a student at State High. I'm on the football team, and I wanted to briefly talk about the significance it means to me personally to play football this year. My grandpa is a state college football alum who graduated in 1965. I can remember going to football games with my grandpa and my grandma, who is also a state college alum, ever since I was a little kid. Seeing what seemed like the whole town at the football games cheering on the team on Friday nights is a big reason to why I continue to play football today. This year is the last year for me being able to play football this year and have my family cheer me on. My grandpa and I have bonded over football my whole life, and it means so much to me that I play for the same team he did, especially at Memorial Field. It also means a lot to my teammates and I, as we've been working hard this year to hopefully get the chance to go out on Friday nights. I hope you look at things from our point of view and take into consideration the sentimental value sports brings to the players and their families. Thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you, Conrad. Gregory Edwards, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Sure, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. So my name is Greg Edwards. My wife and I reside in Harris Township, and our son is a senior on the football team, and our daughter is a sixth grader at Mount Nittany Middle. Back in the beginning of the summer, my son, along with many of his teammates, started informally gathering for conditioning and football drills. And they took it upon themselves to show senior leadership and include as many of their teammates as possible. And as the summer moved along, they were given a set of rules to follow when coming to voluntary practice, some of which were wearing masks, bringing their own water bottles, forming small pods pertaining to their position, which allowed for more social distancing and plenty of hand sanitizing. Fall practices have resumed, and the students followed more of your guidelines, which now included the aforementioned, as well as adding wearing of long sleeves, no blocking, and tackling. These students adhered to all of your guidelines, which I assumed were approved by athletic administration and ultimately you, the school board. And unless I'm mistaken, not one positive COVID test happened to any of the football players, coaches, or support personnel during this time. You had a set of guidelines which you asked the students to follow. The students met your challenge, and the results were more than positive. They were perfect. So now these students, athletes, are asking you, the school board, to meet your obligation and let them play. Don't keep pulling the carrot a little further each time they meet your expectations. Rise up, follow through with your end of the bargain and your obligations in this verbal contract you made with the students. We all know this is much more than just touchdowns and interceptions and fumble recoveries. These student athletes learn so many life skills from playing competitive team sports: conflict resolution, critical thinking skills, individual sacrifice for the betterment of the team, social skills, leadership skills, increased self-esteem, mentors, father figures. It's a group of which these students belong to, and they build strong relationships that last a lifetime. And it's a safe environment after school for these kids to go to. Sports help develop character, discipline, controlling and channeling emotions, mental toughness, as well as learning persistence and the ability to work for a common goal. Even in defeat, life lessons are learned. Team sports help parents.
Thank you for your comments.
No, excuse me.
Oh, we have a 2-minute time limit per person.
We've had a 3-minute in the past, and we've had to listen. Are you there?
I can hear you. We have a 2-minute time limit, just because we have such a large volume of people who would like to speak on these issues. Jackie Huff, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Apologies.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, my name is Jackie Huff. I have one student at First Elementary. And many of the students speaking tonight have really pulled on my heartstrings. I hear them and I understand their struggle to deal with the challenges of this pandemic. However, I feel like it needs to be said that all students, all teachers, and all community members are dealing with heartbreak and loss right now. We're all experiencing a loss of family and activity. I think it's really important that we work hard to have empathy for each other in this situation. And while I would love to tell athletes, yes, you should go play your sports, the fact of the matter is that there are many of us in the community who have a really hard time squaring the fact that our kids can't go to school. It's been deemed unsafe for them to go to school. And it just doesn't make sense to us that it would be considered safe for athletes to go to sports when our students can't go to school. So I'd really just like you to consider prioritizing learning in the situation, because for me, that is a huge priority. And while I enjoy sports, I want athletes to play sports, I think the school district should be prioritizing learning at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I see Coach Scott at psu.edu with a hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name is John Scott, and I'm new to State College, and I just wanted to say that football is a really important part of my life, and I feel like that we should have it this year. And I feel like that football is like a great contribution to my community, and it helped me make a lot of friends just going to practice in a safe and controlled environment. And I went sitting by myself at lunch one day to having friends to sit with. And I also want to give a big props to like my coach. We have been abiding by all the rules that y'all have set. We have been wearing long sleeves. We have been wearing masks. We have been doing the things that you've been asking us to do. So I feel like it would be kind of unfair for you to take the season from us, even though we've been listening on a zero tolerance like thing. Like the coach has been really listening, helping us follow the rules. So I really think all that hard work we put in would just be like put to waste if you want to let us have a football season. And I'm really looking forward to like spending time here and playing for State College and being a part of the community. And I just feel like it would be like such a big loss for us to not be able to play. That's basically all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Stephen Williamson, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Steve Williamson, College Township. I just want the board to, you can hear me? I just want the board to take stock in that all of the conversation surrounding athletics is painting the rosiest picture possible. And while I agree with almost all of it, a lot of the talk, especially from the board, regarding education has been centered around the negative side of things, not the rosiest picture possible. And I just want the board to take stock in that and then to direct their conversations regarding that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Billy Splain, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
How you doing, folks? I'm Billy Splain. We got to speak at the last meeting. I'm with PAFootballNews.com. You've heard all the arguments that we should have fall sports. From quality to yes, it is safe. I'd like to give another point of view.
Have it back real quick so I can leave.
I've had the privilege of covering 5 different scrimmages. I can tell you all right now, and this is something I believe you should consider. Every coach at every event I went to made sure everything was done according to the school guidelines. I believe the State College coaching staff is also doing the same thing. As we speak right now, I just typed on my computer a welcome back to Plymouth White Marsh High School, who has 8-0 approved fall sports. They're in the Philadelphia area. I don't believe they have any different situation than we do right here in State College, which is where I live. I live in Center Hall. It's a very, very safe network that's going on out there right now. People are being very careful. The crowds are being held away. And I do not believe for 1 second that this is a dangerous situation as far as putting the kids in their fall sports. They've been doing it for months and we've not seen any uptick. I'd really like the board to think hard about this and look at the science. The science does show that this can be done. We've had over 4,700 games played in the last 2 weeks nationwide. There have been no outbreaks. We also just noticed that moments ago, Delaware, the state of Delaware, voted to allow fall sports to happen. That's a very heavily populated area. So these places are no different than what you guys are going through right now, but it's very important that fall sports happen for these kids. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Splain. Ari Giros, I see your hand raised. If you would like to speak. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hey, I'm Ari, and I reside in Harris Township, and I live in Boalsburg, and this is my super senior year. And what I want to talk about, I know there's 2 topics that I want to discuss here. I understand the local for sport. However, we shouldn't engage in sport until our COVID-19 numbers are under control. About special ed, thank you for approving the hybrid offer in ISC. I'll be attending next week, And also thank you to all the parents Miss Bart, autistic support teacher, Miss Doncione, and Mr. O'Donnell for all your help and all your time. And also thank you for letting me speak tonight. I appreciate it. And also special ed and everywhere should be recognized. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ari. Is there any other public comment this evening on this topic? Erica Smith? If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Yes, hello. My name is Erica Smith. My two nephews play on state football team. One is a senior, one is a sophomore. I am a teacher in the Allentown School District on the other side of the state, giving a little perspective on how things are going up here. I'm also an assistant football coach. Our guys have been practicing since July. We've been in full pads for 2 weeks, and our school is fully remote. Elementary, middle school, high school. We have 3 high schools and 4 middle schools, and we're getting it done up here in Allentown. I feel very strongly that the school board allows contact sports to happen for state high students. It can be done safely. It's being done safely all over the state, and I feel very confident that state high can do it safely as well. There's a precedent set all over the state. We have a lot of football teams all over the state that have been in full pads for 2 weeks with no cases at all, following every precaution, wiping everything down, using disposable water bottles, and it's going very well. I feel strongly that you got to give these boys and the girls teams contact sports the opportunity to play. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. For a lot of them, this is the last year, their senior year. They'll never get this chance again. And just a reminder, participation in high school sports is voluntary. Parents can decide to exclude their child if they feel the risk outweighs the benefits. And I think we need to keep that in mind moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Smith. Terry Moore, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to introduce yourself and unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name's Terry Moore, and I reside in Ferguson Township. I have a senior on the high school football team, and I do have a couple of comments. What I'm not sure is, why can't they compete until the students are back in school? Especially if you want the football players to be full remote during competition anyhow. I think they should be allowed to play even if the school isn't back in session, because they've been practicing every day. Let them play. Go ahead and let them compete, because this is voluntary. No one needs to play sports if they don't want to. And no one's really mentioned Penn State. The cases, they're up in this area. They're not filling the hospitals, and the students aren't spreading it throughout our community. So even with Penn State cases up, they're still playing football. Big Ten's back to playing football. The PIAA is allowing sports. The Mid-Penn are playing sports. This board shouldn't take this right away from our student athletes. They want to play sports. They have spoken tonight. Please listen to them. It should be the parents and the players' choice whether to do sports, not up to the board. You gave the entire school the choice to do virtual, remote, or in-person learning. Why take the choice away from the athletes? It's optional. No one's forced to participate. I mean, let them do the sports. It's not going to hurt anything. As for Kyle and the tennis team, it's your choice not to play sports. They don't have to do it. No one's going to hold that against them. Don't take the choice away from the other student athletes. You've heard from them all tonight. They really want to participate. Please let them do this. It's so important to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. John D'Amico, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amber. My name is John D'Amico, and I live in Ferguson Township. First, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you, the board, and the administration's long hours and dedication to keep our students and community both safe and engaged in scholarship. I'm a parent of 3 SCASD graduates and 1 current student who plays football. All of them are healthy, happy, and productive young adults in no small part due to the breadth of their SCASD experience. Before I go any further into my thoughts, I want to dovetail on something Terry just said. I don't quite get the rationale for comparing sending 120 at most student athletes into a competitive venue at an outdoor fresh air arena once a week with having 1,000 or more students attend in classroom every day of the week, all day long in an enclosed building. So to say, how can we have athletic competition if we can't be in the school building? I don't quite follow that, but maybe that's just my flaw. So I admit that I'm very afraid of COVID for all the obvious reasons. I've had pneumonia and hospitalized for it twice. I'm an asthmatic and I have parents in their 80s. But the greater measure of my fear is the consequences of peeling back so many socially engaging and healthy opportunities available to our students. As an old proverb notes, an idle mind and idle hands are the devil's playground. We can choose to safely give our students healthy and constructive ways to spend time, thought, and energy under the mentorship of coaches and teachers. Conversely, we can let them to the dark voices of isolation and the temptations of digital society. This latter choice doesn't just scare me, it petrifies me. I won't quote the statistics of rising drug and alcohol use among teens and crime and mental illness we've all seen in the media. We've already heard pediatricians express similar concerns for our sons and daughters during a recent board meeting. In closing, I just hope that you vote to approve full return to competition tonight, regardless of teaching mode, and that you give these student athletes the same opportunity to develop the courage and character it takes for you to be board members in relentless public scrutiny every day. So thank you sincerely for everything you've done for my son and all of my children and all these student athletes.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Michelle Donahue, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Michelle, are you able to hear us? I think you're still muted. The unmute button is in the bottom left-hand corner if you're on. Okay. Hi, Michelle, are you able to hear us? Okay, I don't think it's working. Steve Gutoff, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Steve Gutoff. I'm a parent of a senior at State High, a football player. While playing in remote learning absolutely presents no threat to other students in the district, and it's endorsed by the safety committee, senior football players will lose this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that can never be replaced. This decision will have a lifelong impact on these students. It's an inequitable policy decision to a very manageable problem. I support and I'm glad that tennis and golf teams are allowed to finally get started, even though we are in remote learning. The appearance of tennis and golf and the socioeconomic association to these sports may suggest to outsiders and maybe some insiders that some students have preferential treatment as compared to football players who represent a genuine diverse group of students and families, perhaps with less influence on a school board who does not represent that same diversity. I guess it's only systemic bias and privilege if someone else is making those decisions for our families. All of our families, despite potential financial hardships, should have the same right to assume risk as other families in the district. It's not your job to overwrite the right based on your perception of protecting them. Our football families will take care of each other. These students are learning how to respect and appreciate the differences among us and how that makes us better individually and as a society. Where else can this happen on such a magnificent platform? I'm trying to find a way for school board members who have not participated in athletics or have children who have not participated to intimately and personally relate to this issue. What was especially meaningful to you or your children? How would you have searched to try and comfort them and address their deep loss, only heightened by the fact that it did not have to be that way? Has any school board taken the time to attend a football practice? You would likely be shocked to learn it's basically no difference than actual competition, with the small exception of a 4-inch foam bag fully compressed between players who are, in fact, making full contact. you need to respect the integrity of the other institutions to follow their health and safety procedures. I
Thank
truly
you,
want
Mr.
to
Gatto. I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Christine Shalito, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Hi, Christine. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, as a resident of the school district and someone who has family with students currently participating in sports in neighboring communities, I just want to show my support and agreement with the state high coaches, student athletes, and parents who are raising significant concerns, important issues, and I want to ask the board to vote to allow contact sports to continue with competition, to continue their season, to have their season this fall. And I can't help but ask this question, how this board, which does not reflect the diversity of the students and families directly impacted by this decision, how they feel that they are somehow more qualified than the students and families themselves to make this decision. To be blunt, this comes across as presumptuous and insulting. Please vote to allow contact sports to continue, allow the families to do their own risk assessment to decide what is best for their kids. I'm not sure why the SCASD Board of Directors do not look at our local cohort districts who share the same degree of separation with Penn State, consider that perhaps they have made the correct decision and we have not. The difference is that they listen to their families in the school districts and recognize parental discretion. Our school board has taken the we know better for your child position, and that is disturbing and alarming on so many levels. In your attempt to protect them from a potential danger, you have created, not hypothetically, you have created a greater, clear, and present danger to the mental health and well-being of our children and adversely impacted their future opportunities. Delegate this decision to families as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Shalito. Just to be clear, the state of Pennsylvania requires the board to approve a return to athletics plan. Justice Factor, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Hi, Justice. Are you on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First off, I'd like to say thank you for letting me on here. And I'd like to say I agree with all my coaches and teammates that have said that we have taken the proper precaution. We've worn face masks, long sleeve, and we've sanitized the pads and the balls after touching them. Our coaches have done everything as asked, and we take health screenings and health questions, and we get.
Oh, Justice, we're not able to hear you.
To hear them it would be sad not to be able to see them finish out their career in state high. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. Melissa Bartlett, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Hi, Melissa, if you could, oh, there you go. It looks like you're
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Melissa Bartlett. I'm a resident of Ferguson Township. I currently have a daughter in the 11th grade and also a daughter in 8th grade, both of which are involved in athletics throughout their careers here at State College Area School District. I am an advocate for all athletics to be moving forward. However, I just wanted to state that I am a little unclear on the current motion to move forward for our contact sports in our the current status of our current learning environment. Are we currently in a full remote status as of right now? Because if so, we're asking, it's kind of contradictory actually what we're motioning for, because we are asking our football players to stay home if they choose to play and not allow them to come back to school for possibly 14 days after the conclusion of their season. However, if we're in a fully remote status, what would prevent our students from participating in those contact sports? And what is constituting a virtual setting? Is that going on a week-by-week basis? Could you please speak on the status of what is constituting a fully virtual status and have the board take that into consideration? As a PIAA, USA, and FIH field hockey official, I've officiated, monitored, and participated in multiple contests during this unprecedented time. I can attest personally from both a parent's perspective and also an official's perspective that our field hockey team in particular has gone above and beyond maintaining and upholding the safety measures set forth by the district and also by the state and also by that of the Mid-Penn Conference. I've already participated in officiating several contests within the Mid-Penn Conference, and I can say that those same standards are being upheld. However, what our girls are doing on the field hockey field is bar none top notch. I think we need to take that into consideration as we're making this motion. I think we also need to take into consideration the fact that we're asking football players to stay home when they're participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barlett. Michelle Donahue, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michelle Donahue, and I'm in the Ferguson Township. I have a daughter that plays on the Mount Nittany soccer team and a boy that plays football and lacrosse for the high school, although his lacrosse season did not happen this year. I have been watching the dissection of case numbers, zip codes, HEPA filters, etc., and not once have I seen you dissect the adverse effects that your mandates are having on our kids and their families. Increased depression, increased anxiety, increased obesity, increased substance abuse, and increased burdens and stresses on families. You know that in-person education is better than remote, and you know the benefits of activities and sports, yet you continue to restrict what is best for our students. The benefits clearly outweigh the risks. All these case numbers in our town, yet none of our students are seriously ill or dying. Why? Because COVID is not a risk to the majority of people. Many kids have been in activities and sports all summer and fall. Nobody's sick. A few of my family members have been on the front lines. Nobody's sick. Exposure is healthy. That is one reason why our medical community is alive and well, even though many were exposed before PPE protocols. Our kids need to be in school and our athletes need to be competing. Increasing restrictions on our teams make it even more difficult for our athletes to participate. Having football players choose between playing their sports or being able to receive the same education as their peers is not only unnecessary, but it is cruel and despicable. Flu season is approaching, and the best way to keep our kids and families healthy is to keep them active physically, emotionally, and socially. As a nurse, you are taught to not always focus on numbers, but to look at your patient. Please stop dissecting case numbers and look at your students, families, and their needs. I encourage you to let our kids receive the proper education that they deserve and to let our athletes play and compete without crippling restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Donahue. David Ambrose, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, hi. My name is David Ambrose. I am a cardiologist with Geisinger here at State College, and I'm also the director of the sports cardiology program here. I sent a letter to the board earlier today after discussing with Dr. O'Donnell, basically outlining what the research has been showing so far and what we can and cannot take from it. The research that has been done so far has painted a very bad picture of what COVID can do, but it has not been put in context. Yes, there is a possibility that COVID can lead to myocarditis, which is a crippling disease, a crippling complication. But we have no idea if that complication rate is any different than what happens with the common cold. We just can't say. Research has not been done. Medicine is a very slow moving process that we just can't say overnight what we know and what we do not know. What we know now is we don't know. The Big Ten research project, the small project out of Germany has painted things in a very negative light. but those are not good studies. They're meant to be taken in their context. They're not telling us what we should and shouldn't do. The preeminent cardiologists from the Mayo Clinic, Finland, Switzerland, have all said, we don't know. And at this point, we cannot say to not, I'm sorry to use double negatives. There is no reason to say you cannot play sports. We could be wrong. We don't know. But at this point, there's no reason to say you cannot do this. And that's what we have now.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Dr. Ambrose. Are there any other public comment this evening? Okay, I'm going to turn back to the board discussion. I see a couple of board hands raised, and then after that, we'll be able to. I'm sorry, there is one more public comment hand raised. James Beebe, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm a resident of College Township. I have a son who's a senior that is playing on the football team. I'd just like you to take the time to look at what they've all had to go through their whole high school career already. They had to sit and go through a school being built, go in half a school, then go across the building and go somewhere else. We then had to take away the football field where they didn't get to play last year at all. And now we're at a point where do they get to play or not play? These boys have been dedicated people and good students in this school. And they are probably some of the better teammates that played. I've had the privilege of watching them for the last 5 years and watched them all grow to become great young men. And to sit and not give them a chance to play is a travesty. What are we teaching them? Are we teaching them because every time something happens in the world that we got to stop and hide? We need to go on. This virus is never going to go away, just like the common cold has never went away. But we deal with it. And the whole thing is, please let him play. That's all I'm asking. It's his last time to play, and some of these kids, it may be the last time they ever play, and it's something that they won't forget. So I'd like you to consider taking that into consideration, and I thank you for all the work you've done. Good evening.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Carter Williams, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carter Williams. I'm a sophomore at State High. I'm on the football and the lacrosse teams. Unfortunately, this past spring, our lacrosse season got stripped away, and I can truthfully say that I've never worked so hard for something in my life leading up to that. And I think the varsity letter that I earned as a freshman warrants that. I don't think I've ever felt more disappointed in my life after hearing that news. And I struggled mentally as well as physically, and it was really hard to stay positive during that time. Me being a freshman, I couldn't even fathom how the seniors felt. Football being my fallback, I've looked forward to it since really early spring. This season is not the only thing on the line. It's the futures of the seniors I'm talking about. I know seniors on the football and lacrosse teams that I consider brothers, and I can't imagine how they would feel if we lost this year, especially with me feeling the way I do only as a sophomore. This isn't something we can get back. Coach Lintel and the rest of the coaching staff does a really good job of creating a family through the game with truly unbreakable bonds. So much that each and every player looks forward to it after a long day on a computer screen with 0 interactions. We as a whole have done everything asked of us with no complaints. We've happily done everything you guys have said to do solely for the love of the game. We have done our part. Now it's time for you guys to do yours. Please let us play.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Carter. Okay, going back. Oh, I'm sorry. Nick Beebe, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Okay, I think he's gone. Okay, so I'm going to shift back then to board members for any final comments before voting. Kyle, I saw your hand raised first.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something that I said earlier, because I know people have been talking a lot about this little like informal poll that I ran. It was not meant to be like a statistically significant thing. The point of me doing that was just to see generally what the sense was among state high students as to whether or not we should go back to play sports. And I absolutely agree that that should not be what we base our decision on in its entirety. It was just one more little data point I wanted to throw out there. And so I was just like, the point of that was basically just to make it clear that there were a lot of kids who do not think that state high should go back to playing. And it wasn't meant to be a representative sample or anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Amy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I didn't speak a lot before, and I just wanted to make a couple quick comments. I'm supporting the motion to go back, and I just wanted to clarify some reasons why. One, there were some questions raised in public comment about why, when we're full remote, that we would not recommend competition whatsoever for any contact sports. And I think that's led by our safety team and by the science, and that if we're concerned enough that school needs to be closed, it indicates that there's community spread happening in our community. And that means any kind of interactions are high risk. And so that, for me, is a fundamental reason why I'm willing to approve this plan, is because it acknowledges the fact that when we have high levels of community spread, that we prioritize keeping our community safe. And that means that we can't gather, essentially. So I just wanted to clarify for some of the commenters who brought that up. Hopefully that answers that question. And it also speaks to why I'm willing to approve the plan, because I think that's an essential part of our responsibility of keeping our community safe. And the science tells us that that's the way to do so. The closure of schools in the spring was proven through research to have significantly impacted the loss of life and limiting the loss of life in the spring. So that's one issue I wanted to address. Another one I wanted to address quickly, and for background of community members that don't know me personally and may not know, I'm married to a collegiate athlete who went to school on a full tuition scholarship and played a small sports background. He was a gymnast. And so I do deeply understand the importance of athletics, the role it can play in lifting someone out of a circumstances, moving them to another place, the family that's surrounded by that. I got to be part of that family vicariously in my relationship with my spouse. So I don't think any of us discount the value of those things and what they bring to our students. But I do get concerned by the language that has come up now and then about taking things away from our kids. So the decisions that we're trying to make, as Dr. O'Donnell alluded to, are about threading the needle. It's about providing some of those opportunities as best we can to students and families while keeping students and families safe. And it's a heavy obligation that we take on, and we take it very seriously. And at least I do, and I know most all my board member colleagues do as well. So I just want to be clear about that. There is no desire to penalize students or take something away from them. We know they've worked really hard for this, and we want to give them everything that we can. It's just a commitment that we have to keep them safe, to keep our community safe, to keep the rest of our students and staff safe. And so that's why we work towards finding the appropriate safe middle ground to allow competition while also keeping, doing a responsible thing to keep people safe. So I've said safe 30 times in the last 2 seconds. And with that, I'll move on and defer to someone else, but I wanted that to be clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Scott, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, and I think it's funky because the motion split into 2 segments of approval on the plan. So we've approved non-contact, and now the question on the table is whether we're going to approve the plan for contact sports. I'd like to get some clarification for what exactly happens if the plan is not approved, because the non-contact sports is just a very small segment of the plan, and actually the football reference is outside of the non-contact sport paragraph. So I just want to make sure that as we're voting as a body here, that we know exactly what it is that occurs if the motion carries or if the motion is defeated, since the plan is the plan, but we split it because I fully understand the desire to look at non-contact differently because of the retroactive nature of golf and tennis. So if somebody could clarify that, Bob,
Dr. Connell?
whatever.
Yeah. Well, the interim plan would, because we're not voting down the interim plan, so I thought we had that in memo, but I believe the interim plan would continue as is.
But just for contact sports.
Correct.
And the interim plan is essentially the same as the contact sports in full remote for this plan, with the exception of adding intra-squad scrimmages. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you, Amber. So I do appreciate a lot of the comments, and I know as a former coach of the state high hockey, I'm well aware of the benefits of sports to our student athletes and how it keeps them focused, how it teaches them leadership and to manage time. And I have had the occasion cycling with my son to observe girls cross country practice, field hockey practice, football practice, marching band practice, and soccer practice. And I will say that from what I could see, that our student athletes are absolutely following the rules that we set out in the interim plan, and I'm very proud of them for that. They're doing a terrific job. I'm going to support this motion, and I think Mr. D'Amico mentioned about being remote, having to be remote anyway as a football player, and how is that any different than when we're in person? But I do think that there's a distinction there that Amy made, in that, you know, we have an opportunity to spread the virus, obviously, with traveling to other towns, having other teams come to us, especially in the state that State College is in. So I do think that distinction is important. So I'm likely to support the plan as it is. And I really do have to commend a lot of the athletes that I've observed. You guys have been following the rules. The coaches have been following the rules. And again, I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, Jim. Laurel?
Yeah, thanks. I think Jim said a bit of what I was going to say in terms of how proud we are of these athletes. And, you know, they've spoken very, very movingly about how important being part of a team is and all that they get just from being on the team. And we also know how important the exercise has been. We've heard that from the pediatricians, we've heard it from parents, we've heard it even from the students themselves, talking about how it's helped them focus and helped them get through the day. And that's why I supported the recommendations for the optional summer workouts, as well as for the interim plan. And that's what I've said too, because we have, though there haven't been as many tonight by a long shot, we have gotten quite a few letters and comments individually from people who are saying, how can you allow sports when we're not even in school? And many of them support our being remote. I mean, they're saying we should be remote and you shouldn't be allowing sports at all. And I have felt that the risk, cost, the benefit was worth it, including because this was optional. And we had put safety factors into account. And I've heard several people say, well, see, it's been safe all along. Well, I'm very, very glad to hear that. That's what we hoped. And that is exactly why we put those rules into the plan, was the hope that there would be no known cases of COVID. And it's succeeded exactly the way we wanted. The other thing I want to address is that we've heard quite a bit from students with their perspective from their, somewhere between 14 to 18 years, talking about the loss of this season to them. And I understand that as a 14 to 18-year-old. I'm somewhat concerned to hear from parents that this will be the end for their children. My own son was a senior last year. He was not an athlete, but he was president of 2 teams that did not get their final competitions that he'd worked very, very hard on all year. And it was very, very hard on him. And what he heard from me is, this is very, very hard on you. This is very, very hard on a lot of people who have lost income, not to mention people they care deeply about. And part of being part of society is that you deal sometimes with hardships, and I want to do everything I can to support you to move on. And we are not taking away sports. We are talking about a plan that was put forth with the long, hard work of our athletics department, which I appreciate the effort they put into it, as well as our other administrators and the health and safety team. We put forward a plan that we thought balanced, as I think Dr. O'Donnell used the phrase, thread the needle between the allowing choice for parents and students who, when they assess the risk, felt this is safe for my child, all things considered, and also balancing our obligation as a school board to provide as safe a school environment, a learning environment, for as long as possible. And so that's what we were all looking at. And we may come to different conclusions, but I firmly believe that everyone on the board, as well as our administrators and our coaches, our athletic department, has that goal.
Thank you, Laurel. Any other board discussion before we vote? Okay, then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Bedell.
No.
Ms. Brandt.
No.
Okay. So that motion has passed. And at this time on the agenda, we have time for public comment for items that were not on the agenda. If anyone's here to make a public comment for items not on the agenda, who has not already spoken, I'll call on you at this time. Heather Ross, I see your hand raised.
Hi, Amber.
Hi,
My name is
Heather.
Heather Ross, and I reside in Ferguson Township. I have 2 students at Delta. Many thanks to the board and the administration for all your hard work. My youngest child elected to do the virtual academy, and I was glad it was also run by Dr. Downs, or as everyone at Delta calls him, John. I knew that my kid would not fall through the cracks. We made our selection for the virtual academy and submitted our class requests on time. We attended a meeting with John and Jennifer Scudder, the online learning coordinator. They said that we were getting so many questions that if you needed something urgent, you should call. As the start of school approached, I heard that some students had classes. I was worried that my child didn't have any classes. Then late in the afternoon of the 3rd day of school, I was finally able to get through on the phone. Kevin, the support person, said that there was something wrong with my child's account, and that was why he didn't have any classes. So we got 2 classes and started working, but 2 classes does not make a semester. After another 2 weeks of no more classes, I finally called again a few times and got through. The ASL class that my child had signed up for wasn't going to happen. So now we had to scramble for 2 more classes. I want to say that I'm so grateful for how hard John, Jennifer, and Kevin are working. Both times I was able to get through, they solved my problems and were so nice about it. But this is what operating in a crisis mode looks like. Jennifer and Kevin are not only able to put out the fires, they can't be proactive about problem solving. I wrote to Dr. Stout and brought this to attention that the virtual academy staff is overworked. He said the staff said they didn't need any additional staff. The VA last year had 43 students, and this year it has 370 with more every day. That's 9 times the number of students and no more staff. Something doesn't add up. After 4 weeks of the administration should have seen that there was a problem. Some students still don't have full schedules. How could this have been prevented? Assign more staff. These 3 hardworking staff members can't do it all on their own, and they can't support our children. We need to be proactive and not reactive. Our children are falling through the cracks. Please remedy the situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Heather. Okay. Stephen Williamson, I see your hand raised. This is public comment time for items not on the agenda.
Thank you. Steve Williamson from College Township. The health and safety plan has parameters for shutting down individual school buildings and individual classrooms within a school. Instead of using this parameter to keep our children in school and properly educate them, the board and health and safety team have used a single parameter to shut down in-person learning everywhere. The biggest flaw in the health and safety plan is that it is not a risk assessment. The people in charge of these decisions always mention mental health, but give no discussion to it, as opposed to the hours of discussion taking place on COVID numbers. I implore you to add a metric in the safety plan that says the district will not close any building if there are 0 positive tests in that building over a certain time period, like the 14 days. Total cases in the last 7 days, even cases in the school, does not provide an assessment of risk. There needs to be a comparison of risks with students in school and out of school. This lack of probability data has allowed the health and safety team cover to cancel additional days of proper education with no evidence. Dr. O'Donnell has continually said he is comfortable with the people in that room. If you listen to their comments during school board meetings, it is hard to believe a unanimous vote to keep schools closed would have occurred. Are they being disingenuous in their comments, or are they following a poor document created under leadership that fails to encompass all risk factors? This group cannot be legitimized with any credibility without a complete risk assessment put forth. What is the likelihood that a school employee is hospitalized? What is the likelihood of a teenager committing suicide, a drug overdose? What is the likelihood of generational destruction caused by all the different kinds of abuse in home? These probabilities should have already been presented to the community. Instead, we have overemphasized voices that are too specialized to evaluate the entirety of risk and accept conjectures as reality. There are so many countless damages to keeping children from school, and I find it unfathomable to believe that 5 people on this board callously closed our schools, and that the health and safety team finds the few negatives of in-school learning so overwhelming that they outweigh the scores of negatives to keeping students out of school. Where are the experts being consulted on mental health? Where are the experts on risk assessment? We need to devote more time to those discussions. The health and safety team gives minimal lip service during these meetings and no transparency to their meetings. The reality is that students in the early elementary grades are being done a disservice educationally.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
comments. Ari Giros, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ari.
Okay, hi, I reside from Harris Township and I live in Boalsburg, and this is my 13th year. And I want to thank Mr. O'Donnell, Ms. Tonchione, and everyone for trying to keep schools open. But my opinion for non-general ed and special ed is we should decide where we should go, like in person or virtual or remote or hybrid ISC. Like me, I decided to go back to hybrid instructional support centers because that's where I qualify. And second of all, what about counseling services? Like, why is it not, like, why can't everyone get counseling services as quickly as we can? Like for emotional stuff or anything. Like, instead, we're all focused on scheduling and transcripts and all of that. So please think about instructional models. Please think about counseling. Please think about special ed. Please think about speech therapy, because I have to go to speech soon and I don't know when speech starts. And plus, so please think of all of that. And thank you to Mrs. Bach and Ms. Tonchione and Mr. O'Donnell for all your time.
Thank you, Ari. James Beebe, I see your hand raised. If you have a public comment for items not on the agenda. You can.
Hi, Amber. This is Kimmy, Jim's wife, and I reside in College Township, and my son is a senior, and also like Amy Schoen, he is a football player and a wrestler for State High. Hey, I just want to tell you guys, thank you for what you do, but trust your plan. And if somebody can answer me this, how could you let 500 kids come and take the SAT test that were around some of our kids and were from all different states, as I understand? How was that possible? And yet we have our kids not in school. So if somebody could answer me that question, I would like an answer, please. And you know what? We are all doing our parts. And I work as a hairdresser. And every day I go in a mask. I don't like it, but I have to do my job. And my son has to wear his sleeves, long sleeves, and his mask for football. So you got to trust in what you have set forth. And we've got to make some sense of normal. This is not the new normal. So please, get us back in school. Get some normal. Trust your plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Beebe. Lisa Klinke, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, this is Lisa Klinke. I'm a pediatrician. I live in Harris Township, and I have 3 kids in the district. I really appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done, and appreciate all the hard work of the health and safety team, working with all of the different resources that you guys have available. Hopefully the Department of Health will be able to provide you with better data, as I understand is going to be happening over the next week or so, and hopefully we will be able to get back in school as quickly as is safe to do so. I had a altogether different question, however. Justin Hetrick had introduced the Go Guardian app. So now when our kids are on the Chromebook, we can see what they're doing. We can essentially go into the history and see every single thing that they've done. So we know how much time they've been spending on their work, and we know how much time they've been doing YouTube videos or playing whatever they've been playing. And it's a great app, but for some reason we're not able to access the parental control part of it. And I don't understand why. So I have a kid at home on his Chromebook, and he's able to sneak it from downstairs and be on it all night. And I would like to be able to limit that if I could. And I'm trying to figure out, I tried to talk to Justin, but I'm not sure who I should ask about that. I'm trying to figure out if it's a financial thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I think we can probably get in touch with you on that question. And thank you for your comments. Douglas Glannert, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes. And if you could just unmute yourself.
Thank you. The virtual seminar with the title Culture was canceled. Will it be rescheduled? If yes, when? And what is its content? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I don't think I understand the answer to that question.
I'm not sure when it'll be rescheduled yet. I'll check in.
Oh, okay. Okay, then moving forward to board committee reports and meetings. On September 23rd, there will be a Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee meeting. at 10:30 in the morning. And then October 1st is our next facilities and grounds meeting. And I think we have a finance meeting next week as well, if I'm not.
24th.
On the 24th. Thank you.
11:45.
Okay, thank you. 11:45 on the 24th. Next week, we'll have a finance committee meeting. That will also be virtual.
Did you mention, Amber, did you mention CCL on the 23rd?
Oh, I did. I got that first. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Okay. So the 23rd, 24th, and then October 1st, we have various committee meetings. So then moving on to board reports. Dan, is there a central intermediate unit report?
The last meeting we had was on August 27th, and there are a number of highlights from that. One was the announcement of the award of a offline resources Raspberry Pi grant in partnership with WPSU. 3 intermediate units, CIU 10, CIU 8, and IU 9 are participants. There's not a lot of money, but it's substantial. It's a grant award of $50,000, which allows for the purchase of 150 Raspberry Pi devices, which are processors with some amount of memory, and they serve as, in a sense, mobile hotspots for students to take home. They can store experiences and tasks that can then be downloaded and used by the student who might not have Wi-Fi access or have other forms of internet access. So it's a way for them to remain engaged. And it's particularly useful in more remote areas of the region. And the participants from IU10 include Harmony, Keystone Central, and Phillipsburg Osceola school districts. Another announcement involved, there's an ongoing update to the format for the IU10 website, which is in process. We discussed the creation of a policy committee, much like ours, to be able to accelerate the review of policies that require updating. A lot of the IU policy manual is out of date, as we're working on that. And finally, there was a grant. So we can find a link for this. It was a USDA RUS grant, which was a technology grant that provided for the purchase of equipment that would allow for video conferencing over great distances. And IU9 and IU10 are both involved with this. The amount of the grant approaches $1 million. It's $900 and some $1,000. So it's a pretty substantial grant, which will serve our part of Pennsylvania because of the lack of adequate access to internet communication. So that's the second of 3 grants actually that we're working on. And those are the themes right now. Those are the major points from the September 27th meeting. The next meeting for the IU board is going to be next Thursday, the 24th.
Thank you, Dan. David, is there a National School Board Association or Pennsylvania School Board Association update?
I talked a bit about what's going on at PSBA earlier. I don't really have anything to add for NSBA.
So for the PSBA conference, that's free to register this year for all members.
Right. It'll be entirely virtual, obviously, and it'll be over 2 days.
Okay. Do you know what the deadline is by any chance? Is it coming up? Or can you register at any time?
I'm sorry, I don't.
That's okay. We'll try and figure it out and get the info out to people.
I'll do that.
Okay. Scott, is there a Ed Foundation report?
There was a meeting yesterday. I was unable to attend. There was a review and final approval of the operating budget for the year. Randy, were you able to attend that? Do you know, was it approved?
Yes, I was. And yes, that budget was approved. They talked about various things that have been going on in the district and then also with the foundation related to the COVID pandemic period. They have asked us, for the district, to provide them with a summary of the items that they have been, that those funds have been used for, and we'll be presenting that to them. They are working on their annual report and presentation to the board, which was to happen at this meeting tonight. but we obviously have asked them to postpone that, and we're trying to get them on the agenda for sometime in October with both Finance Committee and the board. And then they also are talking about some new committee structure that they are putting into place to use their time and their people resources. And they, although they know that they're there to support the district throughout this difficult time, but they also are using this time to really establish and firm up some of their organization. And I think that it's really they're using their time wisely.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. CAC liaison reports. Amy, I think were you at athletics?
Yes, I was. We mostly went over the plan. There was pretty minimal feedback from the CAC, some similar questions to some that we had asked, but that was the majority of what we covered.
Thank you. Facilities, Lori, there hasn't been a meeting, has there?
No, there hasn't.
Okay. And Scott, there has not been a finance committee meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay. School health and safety, has there been a meeting since we last met?
No, it meets on November 5th at 12 p.m. is the next meeting.
Okay, great. And then Jim, was the update from technology mainly the new membership?
Yeah, so we'll have a meeting soon, within the next 2 weeks or so, with the new membership.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to future agenda planning. Our next scheduled meeting is October 5th. And we have just, a couple of action items listed there now. If anyone has any items for future agenda planning, please do feel free to get in touch. And with that, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Leah, so moved.
Sydney, second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, then we are adjourned.